I'd like to welcome you to our Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of June 1st, 2022. This meeting is being held via Zoom conference call due to COVID-19. Members of the public may participate by following the instructions listed on the agenda. Following roll call during our summary of hearing procedure, we will review how the public may provide comment during today's session. We'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Nessel.
Commissioner Nessel is present and accounted for.
Commissioner Arnold is not here. Commissioner Royer.
Commissioner Royer present.
Vice Chair Rainsford.
Vice Chair Rainsford present.
Chair Boehm, I am present. The procedure for this hearing is as follows. After the staff report, applicants and appellants may make a 5-minute presentation. If you are watching on YouTube or cable TV and would like to speak during a public hearing, planning, referral, or general business, please go over to the meeting on Zoom and click the link on the agenda. And then you can also call 408-535-3505. If you wish to speak on an item, please use your raise hand on Zoom or press the *9 on the phone. After city staff will then call out the names of the public who identified the items they want to speak on. You may identify yourself by the raised hand feature on Zoom or click *9 on your phone. As your name is called, please unmute yourself. Phone-in callers, please press *6 to unmute. After we confirm your audio is working, your allotted time will begin. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. Speakers using a translator will have 4 minutes. After the public testimony, the applicant and appellant may make closing remarks for an additional 5 minutes. Historic Landmarks commissioners may ask questions of the speakers. Response to commissioner questions will not reduce the speaker's time allowance. Staff will unmute the speaker to respond to the commissioner. The public hearing will then be closed and the Historic Landmarks Commission will take action on the item. The Historic Landmarks Commission may request staff to respond to the public testimony, ask staff questions, and discuss the item. If a commissioner would like a topic to be addressed under one of the good and welfare items, please contact planning staff in advance of the commission meeting. All public records related to an open session item on this agenda, which are not exempt from disclosure pursuant to the California Public Records Act that are distributed to a majority of the legislative body will be available for public by emailing planning support staff at sanjoseca.gov. At the same time that the public records are distributed or made available to the legislative body. Before we begin, I want to remind the Historic Landmarks Commission members and the members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes commenting on the specific agenda item only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in conversation with the commissioners or staff. All the members of the Historic Landmarks Commission, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Repeated failure to comply with the code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, may result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission will now come to order. Our first item is number 1, deferrals. Any item scheduled for hearing this evening for which deferral is being requested will be taken out of order to be heard first in the matter of deferral. There are no items, so we'll go to item number 2, consent calendar. Notice to the public, there will be no separate discussion of individual consent calendar items as they are considered to be routine and will be adopted by one motion. If a member of the commission requests debate, separate vote, or recusal on a particular item, that item may be removed from the consent calendar by the chair and considered separately. There are no items on the consent calendar. Number 3, the item public hearings. Generally, the public hearing items are considered by the Historic Landmarks Commission in the order in which they appear on the agenda. However, please be advised that the commission may take items out of order to facilitate the agenda, such as to accommodate significant public testimony, or may defer discussion of items to later agendas for public hearing time management purposes. If you wish to speak on one of these items individually, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom or click *9 to raise your hand to speak. First item on our public hearing agenda is item A, and that is HP 22-001, which is a historic preservation permit to allow the demolition of the roof of an existing rear addition, non-contributing windows, and other minor elements, and the construction construction of 335 square foot second floor addition, a 49 square foot first floor addition, and new rear porch on a city landmark HL 21-002 in the Hanchett and Hester Park Conservation Area on a 0.25 gross acre site. Our project manager is Rena Shaw, and I will turn it over to Rena.
Rena?
Rena, we are not hearing your voice.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to share my screen, so I was on hold. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, commissioners. This is Rena Shah, project manager with PBCE for the HP permit project file number HP 22-001. The Neffing House was designated a city landmark and was granted a Mills Act contract on October 6, 2021. The property was designated under Historic Preservation Ordinance Landmark Significance Criteria 6 for its embodiment of a distinguishing characteristics of an architectural type or specimen. The Neffing House was built in circa 1892 in the stick Victorian architectural style. The project proposes to add 384 square feet to the 1,915 square foot house, exclusive of basement and garage. The additions consist of a 335 square foot second floor addition and a 49 square foot infill addition located at the rear of the primary structure and would be lower in height and subordinate in scale and volume than the primary structure. The project proposes the removal of several windows on the side and rear of the building, but the aluminum frame slider windows and rear gable towards the end windows are not original to the house and do not contribute to the historic materials and features of the property. The project would preserve following character defining features of the Neffing House as seen on the screen: prominent front gable with box bay window, steeply pitched hipped roof with crossed gables forward of the primary roof ridge, ornate front porch with arched frieze and spindled columns and railing. There's also ornamental gingerbread trim in the incised and spindled East Lake style, and wood frame 1/1 sash and stained glass windows. And the exterior finish is with wood siding which is whiteboard Vigro. The proposed work is consistent. The proposed work, I mean, is the addition, is consistent with the spirit and purposes of the Historic Preservation Ordinance. And it won't be detrimental to the city landmark because the house will continue to be used for its historical residential use, which is consistent with the general plan land use designation of residential neighborhood, and is also consistent with historic preservation policies, LU 13.2 and LU 13.6 of the general plan. The proposed work complies with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehab and also with Your Old House Design Guide for preserving San Jose homes and city landmark, and it would continue to reflect its historical and architectural as well as aesthetic value. So the proposed work is consistent with the purpose of historic ordinance in order to protect the city's cultural and aesthetic heritage, because it would maintain the Victorian era architectural style of the city landmark and also enhance the benefits to the city and its residents. This project is found to be under the provisions of Section 15301 for existing facilities and Section 15331 for historical resource restoration and rehab of the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, consistent with Title 21 of the San Jose Municipal Code and the California and CEQA of 1970 as amended. Staff therefore recommends that the Historic Landmarks Commission consider an exemption in accordance with CEQA Guidelines Section 15301 for existing facilities and Section 15301 for historical resource restoration and rehab, and find the proposed project will not be detrimental to the city landmark and will be consistent with the spirit and purposes of the Historic Preservation Ordinance, and recommend approval of the Historic Preservation Permit, file number HP 22-001, to the Director of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. This concludes staff presentation. The owners, Arthur Kell and Rachel Sussman, are here tonight, and architects Brad Cox and Kelly Miguel are here to present and will provide a brief overview of the addition to the Neffing House. Thank you, and I'll be available for questions later after the presentation. So I will hand it over to Brad and Brad Cox. I see him, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Brad, you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Absolutely. Pardon me. Thank you very much. And good evening. I hope that I'm sharing my screen now. Is that right?
Yes, we can hear it.
Okay.
And see you. See the screen, yes.
All right. So good evening, commissioners, and hello, Arthur and Rachel. So the Neffing House, beautifully already presented by Rena, and we have the project team listed here. And then Rena already mentioned the specific requests, so I won't repeat those. The project team, including the owners who are really dedicated to this home, and we did a lot of research, of course, including the California room at the King Library, the Sanborn maps and whatnot, and then the owners did their own good amount of research as well. Quick view of the four sides of the home. Here's from the front. A view from the south. Here is the driveway side from the west. And you can see the wide wood siding there that Rena mentioned. Now from the rear, which is from the north here, and then from the east, which is the right side. And there you see that nice curved wall, and that'll become important in a second. The owners had approved the 10-year preservation plan, and it's summarized here. I certainly won't go through it all. I wanted to specifically point out year 7, the repairing and restoration of the front porch and steps as being required as part of this preservation plan. Here is just a thumbnail. I'm not pretending that you can see the plans here. I'll show them larger in a second, but this is the basement plan, the first floor, the second floor, and then the roof. And the purple is indicating the additions that we mentioned. So here again is that basement, and I wanted that picture where we saw that curved glass wall. To access the basement, we're proposing to really celebrate that curved wall and re-expose the curved wall that exists down in the basement. On the ground floor, you see the purple here is the addition, that 49 square foot addition on the first floor. And then we're also proposing just to extend the existing deck slightly. The existing mudroom door will be reused, and the existing kitchen door will be reused as well. Up on the second floor, you can see in white here is the outline of the plan of the existing home. And we're proposing this modest 335 square foot addition. I want to point out here that we purposefully allowed that addition to be stepped way in from the sides. And it also doesn't protrude to the rear wall. So we're setting it in so that it can remain completely subordinate to the original home. And then there's the roof addition. In terms of what we can just view from this slide on the front elevations is that we're proposing to replace the wooden fence that exists here on the side that separates the front yard from the rear yard with a brick low wall and some wrought iron just in the front. Here with the left elevation, wanted you to see how we are subordinating the addition, which is right here. Here's the existing and here's the addition. And you can see here it's stepped back and dropped below where the existing roof massing is. I also wanted to point out that wide wood siding that is in the front and the sides of the home. And then on the addition, we've transitioned that wood siding to a narrower 4-inch horizontal wood siding. So it's similar in material, but a significant difference in the width. So we can identify that this is the addition and this is the original.
Sorry, Brad, but I just want to let you know that you have 1 more minute.
Oh, thank you very much. Let's see, I will run through this quickly. There's a view of that, exposing that curved wall of the basement that unites the 3 floors. Here's an initial color palette that the owners are considering. Barrow and ball, the Brinzel colors. And then a quick landscape concept, again with that low wall and wrought iron, very natural appearing front yard, and then an existing wrought iron gate here that will be brought back to use. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, our next step in this process is that I ask the commissioners to see if they have any questions. So let me ask, first of all, Commissioner Royer, do you have a question for the applicants?
No questions. I think it's a sensitive addition and understand the need for families to expand a little bit. I think it's well done keeping the main facade that's visible from the street fairly untouched.
Okay. Commissioner Nessel, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I just want to extend a note of appreciation to the homeowners for taking the effort to do this kind of research, this kind of work. It's not easy. It's complicated. It takes time, and but it's really worth it. It really is. So thank you very much, Arthur and Rachel.
Vice Chair Rainsford?
Yes, thank you. I wholeheartedly agree. I want to thank the owners for the very engaging in this work, which is, difficult, but I see this as a very sensitive solution. I did have a question for the architect about the windows in the addition. So what are they going to be made of? Are they going to resemble the windows in the other parts of the house? What is your plan for that?
They will resemble the windows. The sill, especially on the front section of the house, is a bit ornate. And Kelly, if you're able to find an image of that, please do. But the sill is pretty ornate. And in the rear, we've kept the dimensions of the trim work similar, except we've vastly simplified the sill of the addition windows. And then there'll be wood windows.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I have just a couple of questions, and I too really appreciate the work done here. Number one is the windows that you're talking about. I guess they're on the rear of the house. They're very simple, as you said, and I'm wondering if that was done with the idea of making it different to stand out from the original windows in the house, and whether you had considered any other type besides just a simple trim.
We did consider options and talked with the owners quite a bit, as well as their historical consultant. I think the ultimate leaning was to complement the true historic windows, but to be subordinate, sort of like we were talking about the roof element and the wood siding on the rear, to very much complement but remain subordinate.
Okay, and I appreciate that. If you're happy with them, that's fine. And
Can I jump in there for just a sec?
Excuse me?
Please.
May I jump in for just a sec?
Sure.
I would just say that we would be happy to have a little more ornamentation, but we're under the impression that the commission specifically was looking for us not to exactly mimic the other windows, and so had made that selection specifically to make sure we were in keeping with the spirit of what the city wanted us to do.
Good,
But we
because
would
that's what I
love
wanted
to
to
match the
clarify.
ornamentation.
I wanted to clarify that because it doesn't have to be so simple. It really
Okay.
doesn't have to be. As long as it's not exactly the same style, you know, probably shouldn't be East Lake, for example, but some other kind of style is fine. So I hope that clarifies it. And if it's not too late, you might want to
Great.
rethink. Okay, the other thing is on your first year plan in the Mills Act, it said plaque. I was curious to know if you've already put that out.
Nope, we're still working on figuring out where to put it, to be honest. There's not an obvious place that's visible from the sidewalk. So we were thinking about purchasing something to mount it onto that's closer to the sidewalk. The house is set back enough that if we put it, there's just not a great place.
Yeah.
So we've been struggling with what to do.
Sort of towards the sidewalk so that it could be read from a sidewalk. It would be ideal.
Yeah, so we don't have anything to mount it on that is easily visible from the sidewalk, actually.
Yeah. Well, you know, I encourage you to get that done. That was your first year, so you must be coming
Yes.
up on it already, right?
It's been added as a condition of approval to the permit.
Yeah. Okay.
And we will do it quickly.
All right. Good to hear. Good to hear. All right. Let us go on to our next step, and that is public comment. So I'm going to ask Yen if there are anyone listed in the public that would like to speak on this. Looks like we do have a speaker. Go ahead again. I'll let you do the rest.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, you should be able to unmute now.
I am. Thank you. I just want to, on behalf of Preservation Action Council, thank the applicants for their work in not only supporting the plan that goes along with the Mills Act, but activating a historic place. We're very, very much interested in not creating museums, but places that are active and full of life. So on behalf of the Preservation Action Council, we want to thank the applicants for their work that they're committing to. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Yen, we have another speaker that I faintly recall having talked to before.
Once or twice. Good evening, Edward Salm, actually here today wearing my hat as the president and director for planning and land use for the Shasta-Hanchett Park Neighborhood Association, of which the entirety of the Hanchett and Hester Park Conservation Area is a part. I actually live a couple of blocks from here. I know the house and I know Magnolia very well. I'd be desperate to try and find something to criticize about this proposal. It is judicious, it is respectful, it's adapting the house to the use of the new residents. Anybody who hasn't walked up and down Magnolia, I would definitely encourage them. It's a wonderfully eclectic street with houses like this and one from later decades as well. I think it's honestly an ideal project, and I love the fact that it is within my neighborhood as well, because I would love to be able to point to projects within this specific conservation area as an example of exactly what a historic preservation permit should be. And this to me is a perfect example of exactly that.
All right, thank you so much, Ed. We sure miss you on the commission. I want you to know that. And your voice is welcome anytime. All right. Our next item then would be to turn to the commissioners and see if there's any further comments. I'll start with you, Commissioner Royer. Do you have any further comments?
Just to again say thanks to Rachel and Arthur. I often walk up Magnolia myself as I'm wandering around the neighborhood. I didn't know it was your house. I'll be sure to wave next time. I just like to echo everything that everybody's saying. Thank you for taking such good care of this house and understanding that, we need to allow some historic properties to adapt with the users. I think it's a very sensitive addition and will be a good change for your family. So thank you for taking good care of it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Royer. Commissioner Nessel, do you have any further comments?
Ditto. And that's all I have to say.
Well done. All right, Vice Chair Rainsford, any further comments?
Any further comments? I will just, Chair Van, maybe echo your encouragement to think about a richer expression of those windows in the back. I think having the narrower clapboards is enough probably to differentiate it. So I would be very encouraging and open to that idea. And those are all my comments.
Okay, and I really want to echo everyone's comments about this extremely well thought out and planned and designed proposal. And so thank you very much for your presentation. It is really my pleasure to talk about this in terms of the fact that you have really put so much work into it. You've actually thought about all the conditions that are going to be required for Secretary of Interior rehabilitation. You've hired the right people, and so now it's good to go forward. I would entertain a motion to consider the 3 recommendations made by staff. Do I have someone want to make a motion? I see your lips moving, Commissioner Nessel, but I don't hear a voice.
Yeah, well, how's this? I move that we adopt all of the three recommendations by staff regarding this property.
As stated in the agenda, right? Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, it has been moved by Commissioner Nessel and seconded by Vice Chair Rainsford that we adopt the recommendations 1, 2, and 3 for HP 22-001 on the agenda. Is there any discussion before we go to the vote?
Just a question. Did you officially close the public hearing on this item? I didn't hear it.
I don't think we did. So let's do that.
Yeah.
We do need to do that. I think I overlooked that. Vice Chair Rainsford, would you do the honors of making that motion?
I move to close public hearing.
All right. Can I
I'll
get a
second that.
Okay, we have moved and seconded to close public hearing. Is there any debate? Hearing none, we'll vote. Commissioner Nessel,
I vote in favor, yes.
Commissioner Royer,
Commissioner Royer, yes.
and Vice Chair Rainsford,
Yes.
and Chair Bayman. I say yes, and so it is a unanimous decision with one absentee. All right. And now we can go back. Okay, there it is on the screen. For item 3A, we had a motion and a second. I don't think we need to redo that, so I will proceed to a discussion of the recommendation that we adopt items 1, 2, and 3 from item 3A, HP 22-001. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to the vote, starting with Commissioner Royer.
Commissioner Royer, I approve.
Okay, Commissioner Nessel,
Didn't we?
we're doing it again because we didn't vote the first time. We voted to close public hearing. Oops, you're miming it. I see your lips move.
There we go.
Okay.
I approve, yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Rainsford
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
and Chair Boehm, I approve. So the motion to adopt the staff recommendation for item 3A, that's HP 22-001, has been approved. 4-0 to 1 absentee. Wait for that to put on the screen, I believe. There it is. Now we can proceed to our next item, 5B, which is the recommendation that the Historic Landmarks Commission add the following properties to the City of San Jose Historic Resources Inventory as eligible for the National Register of Historic Places and eligible for the California Register of Historic Resources.
Are you skipping one of the items there?
I am on the wrong page.
4B, we need to do 4B, Chair.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
3B.
Number 3.
3B, that's
It's,
it.
you know, this is one of those nights. I don't know. So forgive me, everyone, please. Item 3B is HP 22-002. It's a historic preservation permit to allow the demolition of the remaining brick walls of the Wade Warehouse City Landmark HL 92-67 destroyed by fire on a 0.39 gross acre site in the Puerto Viso National Register Historic District. And our project manager, Dana Peak Edwards, will now give us the details.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. The application involves the removal of the remaining brick walls of the Wade Warehouse, which is a designated city landmark, was destroyed by fire on June 25th, 2021. The HP permit application proposes to salvage, store, and reuse the bricks in good condition and to construct a monument on the site when future development of the site is proposed. The monument wall would utilize the fired bricks and the clinker bricks, which are the gray ones, which identify the building with the letters H.G. Wade and are the character defining feature of the building. The proposed commemoration plans are in your packet. The proposed removal of the remaining brick walls would not be detrimental to the city landmark because the building was destroyed by fire and the walls are structurally unstable. Many of the remaining bricks are of poor quality and cannot be reused due to the level of their deterioration. Therefore, the remaining walls cannot be stabilized and repointed, nor are there enough quality bricks to reconstruct the walls of the building. The work is consistent with the purpose of the Historic Preservation Ordinance because it's consistent with the general plan and would salvage and reuse the historic bricks in good condition in the construction of a monument wall on site. The monument wall would feature the historic fired bricks and the clinker bricks which are the character defining features of the building. The proposed work would augment the existing plaque on site and commemorate the importance of the industrial building as one of the Santa Clara County's oldest brick warehouses. The construction of the monument wall is consistent with the purposes of the Historic Preservation Ordinance. Because monument constructed from historic bricks would continue to serve as a visible reminder of the historical and cultural heritage of Alviso and the Wade Warehouse. In addition, the conditions of the draft historic preservation permit outline the requirements for photographic documentation, salvage and storage of the historic bricks, construction of the monument wall, and remounting of the existing bronze plaque, which support the spirit and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance since the building walls cannot be preserved in place. That's the end of the staff report, and we have a representative here on screen from Garden City Construction, Frank Duquette. Frank, do you want to speak or do you want to just wait to be called for questions?
I think questions. I mean, you pretty much covered the basics of the rundown. So if there's any questions on how we plan to salvage and categorize the bricks and the condition of the walls, I'm happy to speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Frank, you're from Garden City, is that right, construction?
Correct, yeah.
All right. First, we'll start out with questions for either Frank or possibly Dana. Do we have any? Starting with Commissioner Nessel, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, other than to just express my appreciation because it's a lot of work to tear down this wall and to preserve the bricks and categorize them and keep them in shape. So I hope that it all goes well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Nessel. Commissioner Royer, do you have any questions?
Yeah, if you could, Frank, just explain to us how you do plan to go through that process of categorizing and where the bricks will be stored. I understand there's no specific plan of when the monument wall will be built because there's no development plan yet. So I assume they're waiting for if something else will be built on the site, they'll have to position the monument wall accordingly. So these bricks will be stored until that point, unknown in the future. So just curious where they will be stored and how they'll be protected and itemized for future use.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably take a high resolution photograph of the wall and we'll number the bricks and map them on the plan. And then we'll hand salvage the bricks and clean them with a broad axe. Because the one nice thing about the mortar being deteriorated, it'll make it easy for us to pretty much take the wall down. We're going to box them up. So we're going to put them on pallets, but then we plan on boxing the pallets up completely. So they'll be encased like a crate. So they'll be safe and preserved in the box and stored close by in the owner's yard. And the map and the plan will all be, there'll be a log, created that'll go with the bricks. That'll show right where each one is, so you can create the lettering that spells H.D. Wade and rebuild the monument. And I must say that we were on site just doing some general cleanup and kind of securing the site. And it really is out there in the middle of nowhere. There's not a lot around it, specifically, directly adjacent to it. So the concern of vandals and, that's why it unfortunately burnt down originally. So yeah, you would want to wait to install the monument sign, not only for positioning, but just to make sure that it can, stay preserved and won't get, any damage.
And then I see that the monument wall it'll be a CMU wall clad with the original bricks. Is the back side of the wall going to be salvaged brick as well? So all of the cladding brick will be salvaged.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's unfortunate that it suffered the damage it did and that the wall has to be taken down, but appreciate you doing what you can to document and pay homage to it at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Commissioner Royer. Vice Chair Rainsford, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I guess my first question is, I saw this warehouse many times before it burned, and it is an amazing, or was an amazing structure. And it has a very early date, right, for Bay Area warehouses, industrial structures. So I think it's a very important landmark. So I just want to make sure I understand. It looked to me as though that building had been neglected for a long time. So could you just maybe explain to what extent was the deterioration caused by the fire, and to what extent was it already deteriorated?
There was definitely a lot of damage from the fire, and the roof collapsed, which took down part of some of the walls. So there was significant damage from the fire. But it was the bricks themselves, unfortunately, weren't fired correctly, a large majority of the bricks. And usually you see these sprinkled in walls and there's a percentage of them. These walls seem to have a higher percentage of the bricks that didn't get fired properly, which kind of creates the main problem. Not to mention the extreme deterioration of the mortar, because this is a result of really the type of mortar, the lime mortar that it is. It just doesn't hold up over time. And so we've had there's areas where it's just basically gone. And so it's a mixture of both, but a lot of it doesn't necessarily have to do with neglect. It has to do with the original construction of the wall.
I see. So you're saying that because of the way that wall was built, there would be no reasonable way to maintain its integrity.
It would be very difficult. Yes.
Okay. So I guess my other question has to do with, it looks to me as though what's currently there, because there's actually a lot still there, right? I would disagree with the characterization that it's completely destroyed. It isn't completely destroyed. It's just unstable, right?
Sure.
But it looks as though some parts of all four walls are still there in some shape and form. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So I'm wondering would it be theoretically possible to say rebuild the exact form of that in something like reinforced concrete and use the bricks on the outside of the building to create a stable structure?
You would have to completely take down all the brick and redo that. And the question would be, do you have enough brick to clad it with good brick? And that would be something that I'm unsure of at this time.
I see. Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Rainsford. Yeah, I have a lot of questions too. So first question is, I went by there yesterday and, I had expected to see heaps of rubble, lots of brick just in different piles. And I was surprised to see that it had been cleaned up. The walls are there, but I don't see any brick. So there was a pallet with some brick on it inside the walls, but a single pallet is all that I could see from the sidewalk. So my question is, what happened to the bricks? I thought that you needed an HP permit to remove them.
The only bricks I'm aware of that were removed were damaged bricks. I'm not sure of the bricks you're talking about. I have to go.
All the bricks that are not standing have been removed. The only wall, the walls are left standing, but there are no discarded bricks of any type. There are none that are whole. There are none that are in pieces. They're all they've been removed.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. I haven't been on the site.
Yeah,
Okay.
just to be clear, Frank is sort of filling in for Jim Salata, who's unavailable. So he may not have all the details. But certainly they were bricks that were not part of the actual structure because they had fallen.
They were never part of the structure?
No,
No.
they're not part of it now because they fell. So they're not an existing
Oh.
part of the structure.
Yeah, so my understanding that everything was cleaned up. That's all I'm aware of.
I'm wondering if you could give us a rough estimate of the cost involved in making a memorial wall. If you didn't have to do that, would there be a cost savings?
I mean, of course, the wall costs money. What do you, I'm not understanding the question.
Well, you've identified when Commissioner Royer asked you about the procedure that you would remove the brick, which in my opinion, you've already done pretty much. And you are going to put it in boxes and put it in a storage safe place. And then at what such time as the new construction happens, the wall will be rebuilt. And I'm curious, what will be the cost of rebuilding it? Actually, removing the brick should be included in that cost.
I would agree. I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
But yes,
You can't give me a ballpark?
I can't. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So this, I think Vice Chair Rainsford made reference to the fact that there was a period of neglect that the owners had the property for maybe 10 years. And there was a series of events that happened that caused it to be broken into and so forth. So my question is, how, if the money is to be used for the memorial wall, could that money be used for other things rather than the memorial wall? I would just suggest to you that there is other important things to do for historical preservation. And it may be that wall is what we want to do, and it is germane because it's the warehouse brick, and you're making a memorial wall to the warehouse. I understand that. And so that might be what we choose to do. But my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that on this HP permit, we can put conditions. And so one condition might be to spend a certain amount of money to do something else besides or in addition to building the wall. I think we could consider that. That's a topic for us as a commission to discuss. But let's see. I think I have no more questions at this point. So we will go on to our next item on our step on this item of the agenda, which is to turn to any public comment. So let me ask if there are anybody here. I see Jan Jensen. So when Yen tells you, you can unmute yourself and you can begin speaking.
Jan, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for letting me come and speak. I just wanted to fill you in. I am an actual 5th generation descendant of the Wade family, and I wanted to bring a little history to the meeting. Our family traveled from Illinois to California in 1849 and was the only family to make it out of Death Valley with their oxen and wagons at that time. Harry George's father, Harry Wade, was a successful freight person and decided that he wanted to relocate and start a freighting and stagecoach business. And it included Harry George Wade in the business when Harry was 15 years old. One of the stagecoaches is in the Wells Fargo Museum in San Francisco that belonged to the Wades. Harry George Wade was 15-year-olds when the family came west in their covered wagon. He was the oldest child and his father depended on him when help was needed. Upon arriving in Alviso, he became a partner in his father's freighting business and eventually became the sole owner. And during the mid-1850s, Harry George ordered a prefabricated house from New England, and it shipped around the Cape Horn, probably the first in Santa Clara County. And that is the homestead that is next to the burnt warehouse. We've been working diligently with organizations, with city leaders, Alviso historic groups, trying to find a way to keep this history alive and to keep our family's history alive. We did mention in 2019, when we did a site visit, of our concerns that there was electrical issues and fire dangers. Due to COVID, the enforcement had stopped. Since the fire, we've reached out to James at Garden City Construction, Bricklayers Union in the Bay Area, San Jose State University Engineering Construction Department, Cabrillo College Engineering Construction Department, and E-Clampus Vitus, who are all interested in helping in the project.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan. Our next speaker will be Gail. Gail, when Yen tells you, you can begin speaking.
Gail, please unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Gail Frank. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
The Wade Warehouse fire was a tragedy that shouldn't have happened. For several years previously to the fire, multiple complaints were made to code enforcement about the presence of solar panels, electrical cords, and questionable inhabitants and activities on the property. Now that the warehouse will be raised, the owners will benefit by selling the land more easily and for a higher price. Compensation must be paid for this demolition by neglect in order to discourage other landowners from repeating the tragedy. The city of San Jose has seen this happen too many times in the past, and it has to stop. I suggest an ideal remediation and tribute to the warehouse would be rebuilding it on a smaller scale. Design the same facade in the same location and extend the length long enough to become a usable building, but shorter than the original. The warehouse's usable bricks could be used for the facade and the south wall for the section with the H.G. Wade letters. Some of the arches and brick patterns would be replicated. Newer bricks could complete the structure. I recommend that the demolition permit needs to stipulate in writing the following: a wall or structure monument to the Wade family will be built in the same orientation location as the present warehouse. This requirement will be the same requirement for future buyers of the parcel, as many of the usable bricks from the warehouse will be used in the monument, including the clinker bricks for H.G. Wade. A date will be determined for completion of the monument project, and the original landmark plaques in the rock or concrete will remain.
I think you've ran out of time, but we'll turn to one of your cohorts. Lynn Stevenson, it's your turn to speak. Let Yen unmute you.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Lynn.
Thank you. A couple things. I am disturbed also about the fact that the bricks are missing. I don't believe a demolition permit should be issued until the bricks that were removed are accounted for, that we know where they are, how they're being stored, and what's happened to them. Hopefully they've not been sold or transferred or used in another project. I'm confused about where the bricks that are going to be taken down are going to be stored. I heard on pallets in crates in the owner's yard. I don't know what that means. I see on the demolition permit, the draft permit, it says they're to be stored inside and protected. I think it's important to hunt up the missing bricks in case the commission recommends that something be done that exceeds the wall, where we need more bricks than what is there on the site currently. So I do believe it's very important to hunt up the bricks. I just hope that whatever demolition permit is eventually issued is clear about what the conditions are, that there's no room for vagueness, interpretation, argument, etc., about what's to be done. The permit needs to be really clear about what the requirement is for, the memorial for this warehouse, whether it's doing what Gail Frank suggested, building a wall, whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next speaker is none other than Edward Somm. So I'll let Yen tell you when to begin speaking, Ed.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. I believe I've been unmuted. To reiterate some of what was said previously, obviously the neglect and lack of site security was a known problem on the site for years. Some of these were actual violations of standard city policy that unfortunately didn't generate any solutions. Mr. Salata not being present makes detailed questions impossible to answer. That in of itself is a problem. Not to be indelicate, but as was mentioned, the fire made development of the property far easier, both financially and procedurally. Previous HLC Chair Steve Cohen warned often about demolition by neglect as a fairly standard tool, unfortunately. This isn't the first time this has happened, but if city procedures aren't adhered to and enforced, it will continue to happen. More than one person has mentioned previously are concerned about things like First Church of Christ Scientist as well. The damaged bricks that were removed were still part of the landmark at the time because the landmark designation hadn't been removed. So taking those materials off the site was removing part of the landmark. Clearly done without the consultation of the HLC. I have a question. Was city staff notified that part of this landmark, which was still a landmark, was being removed without any formal approval? The location and chain of custody of those materials needs to be enumerated in any approval. Since detailed questions and the fate of the missing bricks haven't been sufficiently addressed, recommending approval is questionable at best. And previously the city attorney's office has told the HLC that deferring for a request for additional information isn't allowed anymore. So therefore, I think the HLC needs to be very clear about what additional steps need to be taken. I have ridden by this building every week, both for years before the fire and every Saturday since the fire. I have seen what looked like pallets of bricks put together and then wrapped in black plastic and then taken off site. So the chain of custody of those materials needs to be determined before any approval is given.
All right, thank you, Ed. I will follow up with that question after we hear any other public speakers. So I see Mike Sodergren, and I'll ask Yen to let you know when it's time to speak.
Mike, please unmute yourself.
Mike Sodergren, Preservation Action Council. I just want to start by saying Garden City is trying to bring order to chaos here. Sort of the rhetorical question is, why is the property owner not present? Why is the property owner not accounting for the plan that they're proposing? I do not think that the historic preservation permit, the demolition permit by any accurate naming, should be granted until every question can be answered about the materials that have been lost and the condition of the property and the plans for future development. This is a tremendous loss for an entire historic district. This is a significant loss for the people of San Jose. I would add to this that technically clinker bricks are fired when they're wet, and so they're very rare and they're valuable. So I think we have to assume that some of these have been requisitioned in a process that is not legal. Nothing should be discarded. I would request that the historic documentation include a laser scan of the building so the building, if rebuilt, and I believe that's what should happen, would be accurately rebuilt with millimeter accuracy. One other thing that has gone unstated so far is the historic Wade House remains a circa 1851 building that is likely one of the first houses shipped to kit houses that was shipped to California, remains in terrible condition, unoccupied and neglected. This is history waiting to repeat itself. And I believe Dana, that code enforcement should be out there every day until there is a proper securing and stabilization of that particular home. We find ourselves mourning the loss of a building that should never have been lost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. I see another person, or no, I don't. They had their hand up and now their hand is not up. All right. In that case, there was a question raised that I'd like to relay to you, Dana, if you could respond. Were you apprised of the removal of the brick from the property?
No, I was not aware of that.
Okay. All right. Let me turn to our next step in this process. And that would be if there's a motion to close public hearing. I don't see any more hands up. Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I didn't get the name of the person. Commissioner Royer, did you move?
I did.
Okay. And Vice Chair Rainsford, you seconded?
Correct.
Okay, and so we have a motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Commissioner Nessel
Yes.
and Commissioner Royer
Commissioner Royer, I approve.
and Vice Chair Rainsford
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
and Chair Boehm, I approve. So it does pass 4-0 with one in absentia. Waiting for that to come up on the screen. I don't know if that needs to happen. While they're doing that, let me open it to further comments if we can. Once we,
I don't think they put up on the screen closing the
That
public
wouldn't be
hearing.
necessary. Yep.
Fine, okay, then we can safely go to our commissioner comments. And I'm gonna ask you to just give me your thoughts about ways that we could proceed. And if you have any, reaction to what was said by some of the public, or you've had a chance to further digest what's been presented, we welcome your thoughts now. So let me ask Commissioner Royer, would you like to start with any thoughts you have on this or any comments?
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, and then Mike brought it up during public comment. I noticed in the report there is a photo of the house, and it doesn't mention what's going to be done to protect the house from realizing the same fate as the warehouse. So I think we need to address the condition of that historic resource. It's, I don't know if it's part of the same parcel, but it's owned by the same property owner and is also neglected, and I think is in danger of also being destroyed. So I want to be clear that this demolition permit does not include the house, and that something needs to be done to stabilize and protect the house before it is also destroyed.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Royer. Commissioner Nessel, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Well, the comments aren't based so much on fact, but just gut feeling. I mean, Alviso is undergoing a tremendous change. There are a lot of people who want to create new properties and really develop the area. And, when I hear the phrase, by neglect, this place certainly fits that category. And I don't know how in the world you're going to put a monument wall on this piece of property that somebody obviously wants to just raise and build something new and sell it for a lot of money. So I'm just really confused, not confused, but there's just a lot of variables here with this project and not really clear cut to me what direction we should be taking, because it seems like everybody's got a certain interest in this, right? It depends on who you talk to, what their interest is. What does the property owner want? Well, I think, they're looking at that piece of property. You look at what's going on in El Viso, and the price of that property is really going up. So I'm just confused, not confused, but I'm torn by this issue here.
I just wanted to clarify that I don't really know, but I don't believe this is a case of selling and hauling away with a lot of money. The planning department has had several pre-applications from interested buyers. None of them have panned out, either for the reason of a proposal that doesn't conform with the general plan and zoning district, or there are environmental issues like flooding and the composition of the soil. So one proposal was to build a large structure on slab, and that's just not possible with the property the way it is with the physical conditions. So we have had proposals to reuse the structure. It's beyond that at this point with the mortar and the state of the brick. But I just want to clarify that, I don't know that there's a big, there's not a lot of people who are going to be, pounding down the door to get to this property. And, certainly the historic resource was not, a reason why proposals were not happening.
And thank you very much, Historic Preservation Officer Peak Edwards. I'd like to ask Vice Chair Rainsford if you have any comments that you'd like to make.
Sure, yeah, I would like to echo all of the concerns that were raised about demolition by neglect, and also maybe say that maybe we should talk about that issue more generally at this or another meeting in the future. I have a lot of questions about this too. I have no idea what this wall is supposed to look like, how big it is, or anything really, or when it's supposed to be put in place. I don't feel comfortable approving this demolition permit at this point in time at all. I also think that there are several things in terms that are important about this property. One of them, is of course the bricks, and we've talked about those, and it seems as though maybe 2/3 of them are still there in some form or something like that. But it's also the actual form and shape of the building, right? The foundations, the walls. So if there are going to be a new wall built with those bricks, I would want to see those walls actually conform to the footprint, the existing footprint of this particular warehouse. And if we get to that point, I don't see why it can't be just simply rebuilt using whatever bricks could still be used in such a process. I don't think that letting buildings decay should be rewarded by this commission. So I can't see a way to vote in favor of this proposal. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that everyone had access to the plan. So there was actually a drawing set that was part of the material. I just want to make sure everyone was aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I clearly noticed was that this thing is going to fall over any minute now. I mean, the mortar is gone. These bricks are just hanging out in midair, and a strong breeze is going to bring this down. And so something needs to be done in that regard. And if you're going to disassemble it, put it on a pallet, and take care of these bricks if the plan is to reuse them. But man, they looked in seriously damaged condition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Commissioner Nestle. Vice Chair Rainsford, and I have some comments too, so I will be happy to share after you have your, go ahead.
Sure, and just to clarify, I do see those drawings. I just, maybe it's there, but I don't actually see where on the property that wall is supposed to go, or So it's vague to me.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why it's deferred is, that there's really no way to anticipate where, the Department of Transportation or Public Works is going to require things to be. A lot of times when we review developments, we look at tree plans, but the actual locations of those trees can't be determined until the utilities and all these other infrastructure issues are resolved. So, we just don't know where access to the property would be required, and all that kind of thing. So it's just really not practical to do that at the moment. And, again, as I think Frank mentioned, it's pretty rough out there. There's quite a few homeless. So there would, it would not be desirable to build a wall and, have it defaced in any way, until there's a development that happens and, there's the property's activated. I don't know that it would be a good, it might not preserve the bricks in that case.
I understand. Thank you.
So my question to Frank was concerning the estimate that would be required to take down the bricks, store them, and then rebuild them into a wall. And I would think that they'd finish it off with some kind of a border, some kind of reinforcement or support so that it wouldn't blow down with the wind. And that would be, in my view, a considerable cost. And Frank was not able to give me a ballpark estimate for that, but it's going to be a cost. So the question I have, maybe Dana, you could answer this, is who would pay that cost?
Well, the wall, won't be constructed until there's a development. So it's not going to be probably the property owner. The property will be sold and it will be somebody else developing the property. That condition and that historic preservation permit will carry over. And then it will be conditioned, for somebody developing the property to do that.
Well, it seems to me that any buyer that's worth their salt would probably check into the cost of making that wall, if it's a requirement of the sale, and then discount their paying price. But whatever, maybe they wouldn't. I mean, maybe they'll just do it because they are history lovers. But the problem that I see is, and Vice Chair Rainsford mentioned this, is that we don't want to reinforce bad behavior. We don't want to. This is a property owner that held the property for as many as 10 years and really did nothing to protect it. It was a hazard from pretty much the time they bought it until the time that it burned. And there have been articles, and one of them was in July 2021 of Spotlight, in which Michael Zarro, who said he was the owner, one of the owners, said he was handcuffed by the city, he couldn't sell it. And I think, Dana, you've already responded to, part of that is the zoning, part of that is the soil, and so forth. But the bottom line is, I don't know if this building was ever thought of as useful as a building. I don't know if they built it, they bought it with the idea that, we'll be able to demolish it and then sell the land, and the land will be more valuable. Maybe, we don't know. But the bottom line is, we have a property owner that did not take care of it. The fire happened while they owned it. And now we have to decide what to do. One of the possibilities that I heard Commissioner Royer talk about was reinforcing the house that is next to it, the Wade residence, which is built in 1851 and is a landmark itself. The property owner owns that as well. And I would support the money that could be used for a wall to reinforce that house and to make it, it to its original glory. I'd like to see that happen. And again, we don't have to call that any specific compensation, maybe, but for the fire happening. But I think that is one possibility. Another one was mentioned by Vice Chair Rainsford, and I actually think that's a good one too, which is to take the footprint of the actual warehouse and rebuild that using reinforced concrete and some of the brick from the original warehouse, possibly as an exterior facade. Am I characterizing your idea, Vice Chair Rainsford? Yeah. So there are different options out there. And I'd kind of like to get a reading from each of the commissioners as to the other option, which was again raised by Vice Chair Rainsford, is we can vote no on this HP permit. And it would be, I don't know if the building and planning director would overrule us, but we could, that's an option. We don't have to approve this, or we could approve it with a condition.
Yeah, just if I can add to that,
Yes.
I mean, basically, you know, the building could be characterized as a threat to public health and safety. So really, the primary reason why this is being brought to the commission is, you know, to try to have some condition on it, you know, that would commemorate what's left. If the commission decides, you know, not to recommend, you know, there may be a lost opportunity there. It's possible that it could be approved anyways, you know, by the building official. So I would, you know, take advantage of, you know, being able to discuss, you know, the options and the importance of the building, and consider the different points of view, which is the point of this public hearing. You know, the city doesn't want to do anything without, you know, letting people know what's happening, particularly with this important city landmark. So I just want you to keep in mind that context, that, you know, it's not necessarily something that we have the luxury, you know, to delay.
Thank you.
And I believe we can also put conditions as to what needs to be done to the building itself.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just also wanted to draw your attention to the CEQA findings at the last page, that we added another exemption, which is basically actions by regulatory agencies for protection of the environment, because this action assures the preservation of the historic environment as authorized by the city's historic preservation ordinance. So,
okay. Let us consider one at a time. I'm going to go through each one and get a reading from each of the commissioners. Let me state the four possible options, and we can add another option if you'd like. The first one is to approve the HP permit with no conditions. That's one option. The second option is to approve the HP permit with a condition that they rebuild the building with a footprint of the original warehouse, and that the bricks that they can salvage be used for all the walls, or maybe two of the walls, as many walls as can be done. The third option is to approve the HP permit, and as a condition, make it required that they refurbish and restore the Wade residence. Or the fourth option would be to reject the HP permit.
Just to clarify, just so that you can make your wording precise when you get there, is there's already recommended conditions. So I think one of the first one you mentioned was approve it without conditions. So the draft permit has conditions in it already.
Yeah, I meant further conditions.
That's right. So you just want to make sure when you do your motion that it's a little more clear.
And at this point, I'm getting an initial reading. So I'd like to ask the commissioners one by one, starting with Commissioner Nessel. Of those four options, what would be your preferred way to proceed? Do you want me to restate them?
No, that would take too long.
Okay.
Holy cow. What would be my preference? Would be to approve with the condition to restore the residence.
Okay.
I think that to rebuild this building with bricks is beyond the financial scope and capability of any buyer, with considering the earthquake, reinforcements that would have to happen. It just would be insane to try and rebuild the whole warehouse. I mean, you just have to take a look at some of the buildings in Santa Cruz and Los Gatos that got damaged in the '89 earthquake and see what they had to do to reopen. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you have unreinforced brick in a incredibly earthquake prone environment. And on top of that, some pretty funky soil, as Dana pointed out. So I think we'd be lucky if we just got the demolition and got the house, maintained in some good manner.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Nessel. Commissioner Royer, what would be your option?
I think we need to move forward with the existing conditions and some additional conditions, which would include locating, identifying the bricks that have already been removed and making sure those are stored with the remainder of the bricks that are proposed to be removed. I think we could encourage that some more of the warehouse be rebuilt in a more stable structure and using some of this brick for cladding, but have the monument wall at a minimum, as a minimum requirement. And then I agree we need to have some condition that addresses the house and make sure that that is secured and rehabilitated.
Okay.
To be protected.
Thank you, Commissioner Royer. All right, and I'll restate everybody's option once I hear from Vice Chair Rainsford. Vice Chair Rainsford?
Yes, I agree. I think it's possible to move forward with some additional conditions. So I hear one of the conditions being the restoration of the house, right, which is also on the property. I'm fine with that. I would also be satisfied with the condition that actually does not delay the construction of that wall, but actually puts a timeline on that construction. And also,
you've heard that they've said that they want to determine the placement of the wall after they've already basically decided on where to construct the new construction.
Well, my point though is that does it really do much to the memory of the building to build whatever you want and then put a little wall in some corner of the property? To me, that's just a waste, I think there has to be some kind of recognition of that current boundary, right, of where the foundation is, right? So short of rebuilding the whole thing, where did this building exist? What were its corners? The idea that you would just store these bricks in a warehouse and then at some future point, after some developer has built something, you would build a wall somewhere does not seem adequate to me.
Okay, so as I understand it, we all are in agreement that the Wade residence next door would be one of the conditions that they would restore that. And when I say restore and rehabilitate, it means to its 1851 status. If not 1851, then close to 1851. And there are other, two of the commissioners, Vice Chair Rainsford and Commissioner Royer, also stated that they wanted that the bricks be tracked down and identified and safely secured. And Vice Chair Rainsford wants specifically that the original warehouse foundation footprint be maintained, and that the walls, at least, and I mean, let me clarify that with you, Vice Chair Rainsford, one of the walls or more than one of the walls be used with the brick, be made of brick.
Well, so, I mean, I think I don't know if we need to be so specific about it, but I think, to recognize that this building occupied a certain space, right, is one, and that could be marking the four corners. It could be as simple as that. And also having this wall, which has already been proposed, there's a drawing showing what it might look like, to have that actually be built on one of those perimeter.
As a facade?
Yeah, well, or a partial facade or whatever, right?
Right, okay.
But that, in other words, not just to randomly place that wall anywhere on the site that's convenient for a developer.
Okay, and we want to say the front facade.
Sure.
Okay, the front being, I believe that street is El Dorado. All right. Any further comments and or, ideas here? All right. I personally definitely agree with all of you, and I'm almost certain that I would be supportive of almost any motion that you care to generate. So I'll leave it to you. Somebody has to come up with a motion that we can all agree on, and hopefully one of you has something in mind. Starting with the HP 22002 staff recommendations as stated on the agenda. We are going to add a couple of conditions.
Just another reminder or point of order. This would be a recommendation to the director about adding or taking away conditions. And we might also have to explore, if it's the recommendation of the commission to address the house, explore the feasibility and nexus of that, and whether that is even something that we could require.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that clarification. What stands before us is an HP permit. And we are to vote on this, but we have to have a motion. So Commissioner Nessel, can you think of a motion that you would support that we could all vote on?
Let me think for a moment, because I'm reading the actual staff recommendation, and they're looking for an exemption in order to demolish the brick walls. They're asking us to find that the proposed project will not be detrimental to city landmarks and will be consistent with the spirit and purpose, and basically to approve this permit. I think that the only condition that I would put onto that is I would say, I move that we accept these three things with the additional consideration that the bricks need to be properly stored, inventoried, managed, and salvaged so that they could be reused. And we're talking maybe 5-10 years from now. So.
And now, have you had second thoughts about the Wade residence?
Well, that's not on this proposal. There's nothing in here about the Wade residence. I would, that's almost a separate issue, right? Because I really would like that to be preserved. And as you said, restored into the original condition it was when it was first built and some kind of little historical venue created. And maybe there's a docent who would staff it for a few hours every day. And, you know, that kind of thing. But I think that's separate from what's being asked here. So I don't know how to add that on.
I think we're permitted to add on, you know, conditions. That's my understanding. Is that not right?
Yeah, I think it's true. And Historic Preservation Officers Dana Peak Edwards has also clarified that they may or may not decide to accept our conditions. So that's okay. They have,
All right.
that's their prerogative.
Then I would add a condition number 4, that the residence be restored to its original condition and a living history venue created in that residence.
All right. That is the motion. So let me restate it and then we'll see if there's a second. That HP 22002 would be approved as written in the agenda, with the addition that the Wade residence on the property would be fully restored to the 1851 or thereabouts condition and rehabilitated. So
Chair
that-
Boehm,
Yes.
Renee, our city attorney, has his
Yes.
hand up.
I just have a question. Actually, maybe Dana, you can answer it. Is the home part of the landmark? Or is that a separate?
The landmark, I think I can answer that.
They're
The
two
landmark-
separate landmarks on the same property.
Right.
Okay.
So it's not really part of this.
Yeah, it seems to me that that condition is likely beyond the scope of this HLC action item.
That's what I thought, yeah. If you just read the 3 conditions, it doesn't say anything about the residence or even the drawings and so on. Don't.
So my question, City Attorney Renee, is whether or not we as a commission can ask for restitution for their responsibility in the fire.
No, that would not be within the scope of your duties.
All right.
That's essentially, you know, assessing some recovery damages, but yes, the commission wouldn't have, I guess, standing to request that.
Okay. Thank you for your response.
So the only other condition we might add then would be to about the storage and the documentation regarding the bricks and the care that they be taken care of, because it could be, like I said, years before this property gets changed. Would that work?
And the recovery of those bricks that have already been removed from the site.
Yeah, yeah.
To be added to
Something about
the
that.
rest
Yeah.
of the bricks that are
What
being
do we
poured.
know about the bricks, Dana or Frank? Can you answer that? What do we know? Where are they? Have they been put in storage?
I'm not sure where they are. What I can say is if were bricks removed, they were definitely, it's part of our policy and procedures to categorize and to catalog anything that we salvage from a property. And so if there was any that were palletized and removed, there's certainly an inventory of them, but I'm not aware of any of that activity.
Okay. One more further question, City Attorney Renee. Is it possible that we request that they put up a facade of the original brick on whatever is built there?
So that would be something that would be within the scope of this item.
Okay, thank you. With that in mind, let me turn to one of the commissioners. It doesn't have to be. You've been excellent at helping me so far, Commissioner Nessel, but I don't want to pick on you either. So if Commissioner Royer or Vice Chair Rainsford want to chime in here and come up with a motion.
I can make a stab at it.
Yes,
So-
please.
So I think the condition would be not just for the accounting and storage of the bricks, but also to maintaining some elements of the current foundation walls, right? Including at least one corner. The precedent for this I'm thinking of is the old San Jose City Hall that was demolished in 1958. If you actually walk on the Cesar Chavez Plaza, you'll find the cornerstone of that old City Hall. So we know where it was, right? And that to me is vitally important. So that the maintaining of that, at least part of that footprint, and creating some timeline for a building of the memorial wall.
All right. And then also using the brick for the front facade of the whatever is built?
Yes, so incorporating those as many bricks as feasible into the new structure that goes on site.
All right. Okay, so let me restate what I think I heard you say is that we will, the motion is to approve HP 22-002 as written on the agenda with an additional condition that the corners of the cornerstone or the corners be marked of the original warehouse, at least one of the corners, and that the bricks be identified and located and stored. And we're talking about all the bricks that were of use, that are still usable, whether or not they were removed from the warehouse or not. We want them to be used in the new structure as part of the facade. And I know that wasn't as very neat and tidy as I'd like it to be. So it needs to be polished a little bit. I certainly understand that. But that was maybe give you a rough idea of what we'd like to do. And we can, if it's okay with the commission, maybe we can, you know, pinpoint exactly the words that we'd like to do, wordsmith it, possibly tomorrow, and or we could do it possibly tonight after, if we were to take a brief intermission. That's another way to do it.
Just a quick question. Which new structure facade are we talking about?
Whatever is built there to replace the warehouse.
Okay.
Shabima, I think it'd just be best if we just figure out something now and approve it rather than delay.
Okay. May I propose that we take 5 minutes and each of us write down to the best of our ability a motion and then come back in 5 minutes and read our motion and see which one is best? Does that sound like a workable plan?
I think the motion that you read captured the intent of what we were trying to say. So I think it's probably close enough to put into the record as the motion to move this forward.
Does that sound like, I think that sounds like a second. No, I can't make the motion myself. I'm going to ask if you would, in your own words, repeat the motion. Commissioner
Sure.
Walker?
Yeah. I move to approve the HP permit with the conditions stated in the draft put forth by city staff and the additional conditions that any bricks that have been removed from the site already be recovered and stored in accordance with the rest of the bricks that will be removed. So they should be categorized, palletized, protected, and stored under cover to be protected for the long run, potentially. And that the existing footprint of the warehouse be memorialized somehow, at least one corner marked, and as much of the brick reused as possible in a future new construction on the site, and reuse as much of the brick and potentially rebuild the facade elements if possible in a new construction on site.
Okay,
I'll second that.
you can second it. The only question I have, Commissioner Royer, is when you said, if possible. You know, if they built a new building and they want to put brick as a facade, you know, why wouldn't that be possible? I can't imagine what would be an obstacle in making that happen.
Yeah, I just, without knowing what would be proposed for the site, I don't know that there's enough brick to create an entire building enclosure.
Yeah. Vice Chair Rainsford?
Yeah, maybe we could use the phrase insofar as feasible.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and let's say that they wanted to make a glass building. It's not feasible to use brick.
It is feasible to use brick. There are plenty of examples of glass that combine brick. I could mention, even very stridently contemporary facades that actually incorporate elements of historic brick structure. So it's certainly possible, no matter what the style of the new construction is.
Okay, should we state that regardless of whatever material is chosen, including glass? I think it's important because, for some, well, maybe that's just me. Insofar as is possible, it makes sense to me, regardless of the material used. It would be nice if we could add those words. Is that okay? Is that acceptable? Okay, it's a friendly amendment, Commissioner Royer. Is that okay?
It's okay with me.
Insofar as possible, regardless of the material used.
Mhm.
Okay, now we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Okay.
I second.
Okay.
Oh, I beat you to
it. Very good. Commissioner Nessel seconded. We have a motion that HP 22-002 will be approved as written in the agenda with staff recommendations 1, 2, and 3. And in addition, additional conditions that the brick that was removed be relocated, protected, put and stored under cover for long term, and that an existing footprint be commemorated of the Wade warehouse, and as much of the brick be used on the facade insofar as feasible, regardless of the material used for the exterior. I'd like to see if there's any discussion. All right, hearing none, we'll go to the vote. Commissioner Nessel, how do you vote?
Nessel approves.
Commissioner Royer?
Commissioner Royer, I approve.
Vice Chair Rainsford?
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
And Chair Boehm, I approve. The motion passes 4-0 with 1 absentee. Number 4 on the agenda is planning referrals. You can see it on the screen here. Thank you. And there are no items for planning referrals. Our next item is number 5, general business. And the first item is A, additions to the historic resources inventory. This was deferred from May 4th. And to present this, we have our project manager, Dana Peak Edwards.
I don't have any further presentation. This is a deferral of the item as requested by the Kellogg Company. Gordon Paulson is here again, attorney with the Kellogg Company, and he has his hand up to speak. So whether you'd like to discuss it first and then ask him any questions is up to you how you'd like to proceed.
I'm going to invite Gordon Paulson to speak first, and then if we have questions, we'll ask. Gordon, as soon as Yen says, you can begin speaking.
Gordon, you should be able to unmute.
I just unmuted. Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Gordon Paulson. I am corporate counsel for Kellogg Company. I first want to thank the commission for giving us an additional month to look into the desire of the commission to add our Eggo plant located at 475 Eggo Way on the City of San Jose Historic Resources Inventory as an identified structure. As part of Kellogg's global portfolio, one of our most important brands and related products are our Eggo products, many of which are made at our facility at 475 Eggo Way. Kellogg has a deep sense of the importance of our history, as we were founded nearly 116 years ago by W.K. Kellogg. After all these years, we remain guided by his values and principles upon which he founded the company so many years ago. So we share the same passion about preserving history as the San Jose Historic Landmark Commission in its important work that we're discussing here. That being said, Kellogg respectfully requests that the commission not add our Eggo plant located at 475 Eggo Way on the City of San Jose Historic Resources Inventory as an identified structure. As I noted in our last meeting, even more important to Kellogg than preserving history is our commitment to safety. The safety of our people, our vendors, our customers, our consumers, and our neighbors. This would be our highest priority without regulations, but we are also intently focused on making sure that all we do is compliant with the regulations applicable to our business, such as the FDA, OSHA, and EPA, just to name a few. At times, in order to abide by our commitment to safety and compliance with applicable laws and regulations, we need to make updates to our facilities from time to time. After consulting with professionals, we remain concerned that our Eggo facility located at 475 Eggo Way being included on the San Jose Historic Resources Inventory as an identified structure would hinder or make impossible our ability to make changes necessary to the Eggo plant from time to time as circumstances dictate in order for us to meet our.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon. Are there any questions for, I guess Gordon can be asked questions. Let me ask if Commissioner Nessel, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, Commissioner Royer?
Yeah, I guess I just am curious what safety and code concerns you think you would not be permitted from doing if you were listed on the registry. I would assume most of your safety concerns are interior to the building, which would not be impacted by this status. And then any ADA compliance concerns or anything like that would be allowed to be updated even on a historic structure. So I'm just curious what the safety concerns are.
Gordon? Gordon, would you like to respond? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was muted. I think my wife would like to have that feature as well. Commissioner Royer, I appreciate your question. There are times in dealing with our plants that we do have to make changes to the exterior of the structure in order to make the interior work as well. And so at the end of the day, there's enough uncertainty there that, and we are very regulated and we take our commitments to those regulations seriously, that we would not do anything to hurt the aesthetic. We would try to do everything possible to keep the aesthetics as well as we could, but the main focus on making sure that we can do things to our facility to make sure we're compliant and we're keeping everyone safe in the neighborhood and our employees safe.
Okay, any further questions, Commissioner Royer?
No, nothing further.
Okay, Vice Chair Rainsford?
Yeah, I guess I have two questions, maybe for Dana. If this were to be added to the historic resources inventory, would this in fact prevent any kind of changes to the structure for safety reasons?
No, I mean, as we discussed at the last meeting, it's really just a flag to let the property owners know that there will be a historic, assessment, likely if demolition or any other substantial change is proposed. And that's really the primary reason and directive by the city council, is to, have forward planning so that people are not caught off guard.
Okay, great. And then the other question is, I don't think I've seen images of this building. Is it architecturally significant? Why was it placed on the inventory?
No, I don't think it would be architecturally significant. It would be related to the association of manufacturing the waffle. But again, it hasn't been evaluated. So that's why it's identified as, an identified structure. It may be that once it's evaluated, it's not significant. Again, as we discussed last month, we don't know, where the Dorset Brothers house was, if it's still there. If the factory that they originally made the waffles in, they jerry-rigged it from some other manufacturing plant into the waffle factory. I don't know where that is or if that's still around. So we don't have enough to flag to say that it's something that will be documented and researched at the time that something's proposed.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Rainsford. I too had a similar question. So I don't know if you have information, Gordon, about continued use of the building. Is it your understanding that the building will be continued to use as it is now?
Oh, certainly. We have no plans to discontinue production. We need to make as many waffles as we can. We're selling lots of them.
Great. Excellent. Good to hear. Okay. Thank you very much for taking our questions. And because this is general business, let me ask City Attorney Ortega, do we need to vote to close the hearing? No, I don't think it is a public hearing. So we can go on to any further comments about this property and then look to vote either yes or no on whether it is put on the HRI. So Commissioner Royer, do you have any further comments on it?
No further comments.
Okay, Commissioner Nessel?
Well, yes, because this comes up again in the next correspondence that came up, where we wanted to identify, the city wanted to add a property to the HRI, and the owner of the property wrote in and said, no, thank you very much. Please don't add my property. And we have the same thing happening here, that whereas the Kellogg's company is saying, no, please don't add my property. For whatever reason.
If I could address that, because
yeah, please. I don't know what are we as a city? Do we just say that's too bad? We're gonna add you, or what?
Between these two, you can potentially make a distinction if that's the path you want to go, or it makes you more comfortable. So with this one, with the AGO potential listing, we don't have any documentation. So if you're not comfortable listing it without documentation, that's certainly something, you know, that you might consider. The other property has been determined to be eligible for the National Register and the California Register through, and I could talk about this at the next item, but through the high speed, it was identified in the high speed rail historic resources assessment by the consultants for that project on that EIR. So that's been documented and it's been determined eligible. So there's a difference between those two things. So sit with those two. And then I would put forth that because there has been a determination of significance by a qualified consultant, that's the commission's purview to decide whether something should be on the inventory, you know, because it's either potentially significant or significant. Because the Eggo waffle factory, you know, has not been documented, then you may take the stance that we're not going to add that at this point in time. So the property owner objective in some ways, like you're saying, is irrelevant. The commission's expertise is, you know, the historic significance and whether something potentially meets the criteria. And so there's been a determination on the other property, and that would be what the HLC would consider.
So there's no obligation, just of the fact that the city puts it on as an interesting site or identified site, sorry. That just means we'll have to take another look at it. We need more research. Is that correct?
For this commercial property, yes, that's correct.
Right, for the
commercial
Eggo.
properties, commercial and industrial properties go through, they have a amendment process that's required regardless of whether it's on the inventory. So if they made any changes, it would have to go through that adjustment process no matter what. So this wouldn't have any impact on a commercial property or an industrial property.
And even a residential property, right? Because it just means like further investigation is warranted.
For residential properties, single family house permit would be required.
Okay, so there are, when we put something on the inventory and it's residential, there are obligations imposed upon the property owner.
For single family properties, yes.
For single family residential property. If it's a commercial property, putting it on the HRI as a identified site means more research is required. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, there may be properties that are listed on the inventory that are commercial that have been documented. It's just that this is the situation for this property.
This is a new one, and we're saying this needs to be researched. So, I guess I'm just basically uncomfortable with the idea that the city can come in and say, hey, you know, we're going to designate your property as X, Y, or Z, and you don't have a say about it. That's my concern.
Well, just to clarify, it's not a designation. There is a little bit of a difference. So if a property were designated a city landmark, then a historic preservation.
That's a whole, yes.
Yeah, and there would be the property owner notification, which we do for this anyways, but it's just a separate process.
This is just a little flag that says, hey, we should look at that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know, but what do we do here? Where the company has said we don't want to do it.
Yeah, let's turn to a couple other people. Vice Chair Rainsford, you haven't chimed in yet. What are your thoughts on this property?
Well, since we know really nothing about the building at all, I would just say I have no strong desire to put this on the inventory. So I'm just as happy to let it not go on, because who knows? Who knows what this building is? And I think it's better to just wait until we actually have some documentation so we can have a discussion about it.
Okay, thank you. And I too share that same opinion, and especially hearing what Commissioner Nessel says with his feeling about it. I'm wanting to support that. So with that in mind, we have a decision to make about putting this property on the HRI. And so I think this requires a motion, does it not? City Attorney Ortega, yes. So, Commissioner Nessel, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, let me go read what it is. Staff recommends to add. So I'm going to move that we recommend not adding the property at 475 Ego Way to the HRI as an identified structure.
Okay, and do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a discussion. Anybody would like to make their views known? Are we ready to vote? Let's vote. Commissioner Royer, how do you vote?
Commissioner Royer, I approve.
Okay, Commissioner Nessel,
Nessel, I approve.
Vice Chair Rainsford,
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
and Chair Boehm, I approve. So the motion to not include this property at 475 Ego Way on the HRI passes. And I'm not sure if they want to put that up on the screen. Here it is. Thank you very much. Our next item is 5B, additions and modifications to the Historic Resources Inventory. And we have a number of additions. And I'd like to make a comment at this point in time. Bear with me for just a minute, please. As we turn to the topic for on item 5B, I'd like to make a brief comment about the process of adding properties to the Historic Resources Inventory, what it means to our city. The City Council adopted Ordinance 13.48, which included the Historic Resources Inventory, HRI, as a resource for future designation of landmarks and districts, and to guide staff and the public in reviewing proposed development. I especially want to emphasize the value in bringing these historic properties to the public awareness. There have been occasions in which a property owner or the HLC has been motivated after their property is placed on the HRI to designate the property a landmark. Awareness is critical for historic preservation. For this reason, we celebrate placement of properties on the HRI. We recognize that the people that prepare the reports, including the photos, background history, and facts related to the property, allow us to make a proper decision. As Deputy Director Dr. Manford remarked last month, the Historic Preservation Officer, Ms. Dana Peak Edwards, has many duties, including maintaining the HRI. Ms. Peak Edwards and her predecessors deserve an enormous salute for their diligence in bringing properties, 16 properties last month, 8 more this month, and a property to a candidate city landmark status. This is excellent work, and I'm excited to review these properties. With that, I turn it over to Dana.
Thank you, Chair Boehm. Just to recap, in 2017, the San Jose City Council adopted the Historic Survey Strategy and directed staff to proactively identify historic resources and update the Historic Resources Inventory to allow the city to preserve more historic structures. Properties are identified through public projects and historic resource surveys, and private development projects analyzed in the environmental review process. The properties proposed to be listed in the Historic Resources Inventory were identified in the following projects: the Diridon Station Area Plan Amendment Addendum to the Downtown Strategy 2040 Environmental Impact Report. This was an appendix called the Built Resources Historic Status Database. Historic Properties Survey Report for the VTA Santa Clara Alum Rock Light Rail Project. A technical memorandum, Historic Resources Evaluation Report for the Silicon Valley Rapid Transit Corridor, Environmental Impact Statement, Environmental Impact Report Alternatives, 699 West San Carlos Street Affordable Housing Project, and the Garden Gate Tower Environmental Impact Report. Several properties were evaluated under federal historic preservation requirements, like the National Historic Preservation Act, which is Section 106, and the National Environmental Protection Act, for eligibility for listing in the National Register of Historic Places and the California Register of Historic Places, because there was a federal project or the project involved federal monies. They were found not to be eligible for listing in these registers. However, the properties were not evaluated under the criteria for significance for city landmark designation in accordance with Historic Preservation Ordinance. And they appear to potentially have significance on the local level based on the history that's provided in the DPR forms. Therefore, they've been flagged as identified structures. The staff report outlines 4 properties proposed for listing in the HRI as eligible for the National Register of Historic Places and eligible for the California Register of Historical Resources. 8 properties proposed for listing as identified structures, and 1 property proposed to be reclassified that's already listed on the inventory from structure of merit to candidate city landmark. And that's, let's see, planning staff mailed written notice on May 17th, 2022 by certified mail to the property owners and occupants of the buildings recommended for listing in the HRI. Email correspondence was received from the owner of 415 Illinois Avenue, which was forwarded to commissioners. And staff is available for questions.
Thank you very much, Dana. Let me ask if the commissioners have any questions for Dana. Let me ask Commissioner Royer, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Nessel. You're muted. You're muted, Commissioner Nessel. Sorry, I can't hear you.
There you go. Okay, sorry. So my question has to do with a couple of the properties listed. And again, one of them, we received the communication from the property owner who didn't want to be listed. And what do we do about that? And the other property, I'm trying to bring it up here, was this one at 179 to 181 Rhodes Court. I couldn't find a lot of information on that one. I saw a picture of it, and it just says that it's been determined eligible for the National Registry. And when I look at it, I'm wondering why. And so I guess my first question is to do with the Rhodes Court. What is it about that building that makes it eligible for the National Registry and the California Registry as well?
So the database that was done for the DSAP amendment in that environmental document put together a database that tried to identify what the potential for necessary research would be if somebody were to redevelop the property. So they kind of classify it as a high, medium, low. What they did was they identified all the other databases that these properties were in and previous determinations that had been made. So whether or not something had been surveyed, whether something still needed to be surveyed, what the estimated data construction is, that type of information. I was unable to locate the determinations. The database indicates that it had been determined by a qualified consultant as being eligible. Chances are it's probably some federal project that it was part of. But I don't have documentation for that beyond that it was determined to be eligible for the National Register and the California Register. My guess is it's probably architecture because it is a little bit unusual.
Well, yeah, I don't agree with that assessment. I think it looks pretty hodgepodge and just kind of like a California. I look at the street too, and I don't see it being as a standout. So I don't know why that's a pretty significant kind of designation for a property, the National Register. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And this house to me looks like something built in 1972 and maybe added on with just a box on top. I don't quite understand this one.
Well, you know, one option too may be if you wanted to add it instead as like an identified structure that's been flagged. I mean, we think it's potentially because of this determination, but we don't have the documentation behind it. That's something that we could, you know, also change once that documentation is received.
Well, if we want to do more research on it, I'd be in favor of that, but it sounds like.
Well, if there was a determination already made, there is documentation that exists already.
Yeah.
We just don't have it. So, I mean, I can pretty much guarantee you that it was done, you know, by a qualified consultant as probably part of some other project that either involved federal money or, you know, was a federal project. Could be one of the BART projects.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to wait or you wanted to just flag it, you know, as an identified structure, and then we could change it when we receive the documentation, because it is what it is. If the determination has been made, the determination has been made. And that's in a database in the state resources database.
Okay, so I mean, is that something I can do? I can make a recommendation that this not be eligible and that instead it just be identified as a, you know, identifiable site. I mean, does anybody else have a question about this property? Am I the only one? I'm looking at a picture of it right now and on the staff report, and there's like 10 words to describe it. So anyway, to me, this is not a National Register kind of property. So that's my, and then the other one was the one right before it on Illinois Avenue that we received the correspondence on. And this is also somehow designated as eligible to be on the National Register of Historical Places.
Yeah, what I have for that is this was just taken from the EIR from the California High Speed Rail Project. I couldn't find the DPR form, but I did reach out to VTA and they're going to send me their information.
Yeah.
But that it says it's a small one-story residential building. It's a good example of a turn of the century workers' cottage in San Jose. The property is individually eligible for listing in the National Register under criteria C, which is the architecture criteria. The period of significance would be 1899 to 1950, the era in which the residence was constructed and used as a workers' cottage.
You know, I have a
The
question.
EIR.
I have a question. If a property is determined to be eligible as part of another, you know, development, we're not making a separate determination that it's eligible. So we're just merely listing it. And so it's already been determined to be eligible, correct? So it's just going on our list so that we don't have to go out to looking at several different documents to find what properties have been determined to be eligible in the vicinity of a proposed development, right?
That's correct. So any qualified consultant would be using the same information. If there's been a determination already made, then they'll be using that determination.
I'm not sure if I can shed any light except to say that, you know, it's hard to imagine what a worker of 1900, you know, could afford. And so you see this little house and that's what they could afford. And it's been somewhat well maintained over the years. It's not like we have a lot of these different types of houses. I'm talking about the Illinois Avenue house. Anyway, let me ask if you have any other questions or comments, Commissioner Nestle.
These are the two that just jumped out to me.
Okay. Commissioner Royer?
No, no other questions.
Okay, Vice Chair Rainsford?
Yeah, just to clarify, so I understand we're just discussing and potentially approving adding these to the historic resources inventory. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so in that case, I have no problem adding all of these and I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. I just have one question. I found on one of the listings of the properties that you considered West San Carlos Street and McVoy. And it's called the Black Cat Theater. And it was listed at 699, I think, West San Carlos. But it's not one of the ones that you listed for addition to the HRI. I think it was found that it was not, you know, they didn't think it was historic, but it was built in that same era, circa 1900.
Yeah, it is proposed for listing.
It is proposed for listing, but I don't see it on the list.
It should be on the list.
It's 260 McAvoy.
Oh, 260
260 McAvoy. Yeah, it's got, because it has two buildings and it's one parcel, they face different streets.
I see. Okay. The Black, what is now the Licorice Theater or Black Cat Theater was there were two of the buildings, and one of them, I think it's the Licorice Theater, was not recommended for in addition to the HRI. And I found that to be quite interesting, and the age of the building is such that.
Well, they're both recommended for listing.
Oh, okay.
The whole parcel.
I thought I read
the whole parcel.
that it
No,
was,
I mean, what you may be reading is in the evaluation that was done, it was evaluated for National Register and California Register eligibility because it was evaluated for a federal funding project.
Okay.
But it was never evaluated for city landmark candidacy.
You know, this is one of those, and I don't want to liken it to the Wade warehouse, but we have two buildings on the same site owned by, I would assume, the same owner. And yet on the listing, it only lists 260 McEvoy. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Evoy or something. Anyway, you've clarified it. I'm good with that. So
But we can, well, if it's approved for listing, it's really goes by the parcel number, but we can double list it under the same parcel number and two addresses if you think that would be clearer.
let me give that, I'm going to defer to your discretion on that. All right, before we go to comments and a vote, I have a person in the public, Mike Sodergren, that would like to speak. Would you unmute him, please?
Mike, you should be able to speak.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I just want to, on behalf of Preservation Action Council, say that we applaud the efforts of the city to at least add identified structures to the historic resources inventory. It is helpful, I think, to developers to know. You know, we look at a structure and we can see it as obviously historic based on architecture, based on what stories we know of the people that were involved with that property. But not every developer would necessarily know that. So I think we need to start looking at these additions as positive for the development process, so that we don't hear from a developer, oh, I had no idea, that this was a historic, this property had historic value to it. And I am, just on a technical note, I heard the discussion about the McAvoy Black Hat Licorice Theater. My brother-in-law actually rented that theater. The owner of that property and I think it's Black and Brown now, shop that's on the corner of McAvoy and San Carlos is owned by the same owner. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. We have another public speaker, Ed Song.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and go against type and be brief. Obviously, wanted to thank staff for all the effort of putting together additional items for the HRI, both on and off the HLC. I was pushing then Planning Director Rosalind Chewy as early as 2017 that being proactive with the HRI is both a boon to the Historic Preservation Ordinance and to developers, because they know what to expect. And that's consistent with city guidelines for things like urban villages and the Dearborn Station Area Plan, where the key is give developers the information up front so there's no surprises, so the development process can hopefully go more smoothly. The one other thing I will say, the one property on here that I was most heartened to see that I know quite well is actually the old Packard dealership, 865 the Alameda. And not just because that's my landlord's business and my landlord was the one that renovated it, but anybody who has been inside and who was able to go to the reopening when they had old Packards parked out front and everything else, it's a building that, had it not been so drastically changed in the last half century, it might have remained a landmark. But now, because they put so much effort into restoring it, having it at the very least back on the HRI, I think is a very important step. And I was very happy to see that as well.
Thank you very much, Ed. I have to say, I like your icon when you speak. It's got a beard and we like you in that look, so keep it up. All right, our next speaker is identified with the numbers 1559367. So if that is you, please identify yourself, state your name, and begin speaking when Yen gives you the signal.
You can go ahead and unmute.
Yes, substitute teacher. I relocated to District 3 from District 1, a retired substitute teacher. And on Cesar Chavez Day, I wanted to go to see the Cesar Chavez home in recognition of him, which is located in the Mayfair District on 53 Sharif Avenue, zip code 95116. It is considered an historic place. It is on the landmark. It's number 98. It has a plaque in front. I was sorely disappointed to see the home. It looks to me like it hasn't been touched in 50 years. And it is a private residence. My question is, when you have rehabilitation and monies possibly to preserve a house, how do you get that information out? That if you're on the historic list and you actually have a landmark designation, that you could be possibly, allocated certain monies to refurbish like Cesar Chavez home, because honestly, that was a sore disappointment. And to me, I'm hoping that the new city council and the new mayor may take a look at that. And that's my question. And the other observation I made tonight was I was confused myself between what is designated, what is historic landmark, what's on an inventory. It got a little bit confusing, and especially with federal funding projects. No wonder some of these people that come on are like, I don't want any part of this. So I'm just stating that if you have a committee that meets, what are your annual work plan goals on reaching out to the community and saying, we need to preserve these structures and this is what you can do, and adapt it to the owners and how to take care of the home, et cetera. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Let me just really briefly state that what we're considering tonight is to name these additional structures to be on the historic resources inventory, which is, as we've said before, it's kind of a preliminary alert to possibly get more research done on the property and guidance. And as Ed was talking about in his interlude, that it could be for planning purposes. If you have a historic structure nearby, it's nice to know ahead of time so that modifications might be needed. All right, let's go forward. I don't see any further public comments, so we can go on to our comments and then possibly a vote. Any further comments, Commissioner Royer?
No further comments.
Okay, Commissioner Nessel?
Well, I have no further comments. Are we going to have a motion here on this?
We will, but not
Okay.
quite yet, not quite yet. Vice
Okay.
Chair Rainsford, do you have any further comments or questions?
No further comments.
Okay, so now I would entertain a motion regarding the additions and modifications to the historic resources inventory as written on our agenda item 5B. Okay, Vice Chair Rainsford.
I move to accept the recommendations of this item and approve all of the properties. So these would include those eligible for National Register of Historic Places and those structures that are recommended to be added to the historic resources inventory,
Okay, do we have
as well as a change of address. So I think there are 3 items there.
Okay. So your motion is to approve the staff recommendation.
As written.
Sorry?
As written.
As written? Thank you. And do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Nessel, what are your thoughts about this? You still had some doubts?
Yeah, I still have some doubts. I'll probably just vote no for those 2 properties there that I don't quite understand why they are on this list. Illinois Avenue and the Rhodes Court.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I know you have your concerns. Okay, thank you. Why don't we go, are we ready to vote? Let's go ahead and vote on the motion to add the properties on item 5B as stated on the agenda. Both the items for eligible National Register of Historic Places and eligible for California Register of Historic Places, as well as identified structures. So we'll vote Commissioner Nessel.
Commissioner Nessel votes no.
Okay, Commissioner Royer.
Commissioner Royer, I approve.
Okay, and Vice Chair Rainsford.
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
And Chair Boehm, I do approve. So we have passed that item 3-1 with 1 person absent.
Chair, if I may, I believe you need 4 votes for, yeah.
Yes.
So you can defer this action until you have an additional member. So that's another option you have. Otherwise, there's just no action.
Okay, fine. No worries. Thank you.
The other option might be if you want to defer 1 or 2 or whatever ones there's concern about, and then you could approve the ones that there's consensus on.
Okay, well, why don't we do that? I would entertain a motion to approve the additions and modifications except for items A and B of number 1. In other words, except for 415 Illinois and 179181 Rhodes Court.
Can we also ask that we get more information on those 2 properties?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the 5, what are the numbers again? I'm sorry, 5. B1 with the exception of 1A and 1B. And I would ask that we get additional information on 1B. And we also clarify and get some ruling on the property owner's desire not to be listed for 1A.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just clarify what do you mean by ruling?
If can an individual, a property owner, decline the assignment of their property onto the National Register of Historic Places or the California Register of Historical Resources?
So the answer, yeah, would be no.
They cannot decline that.
Well, it was determined to be eligible. It was not listed. So that's in terms of what we have to do for our environmental review. That's one and the same thing in terms of consideration, which is why it's important, you know, to identify these things, because if somebody is caught unaware and they want to redevelop a property, it goes through a separate, you know, it may have to go through an EIR process, which could be, you know, 12 to 18 months.
Okay, Commissioner Nessel, let me explain it in the way that I understand it. We are not necessarily approving these or not approving these for eligible as National Register. That's not our job. It's already been done. What we're approving is a placement on the HRI. Is that right, Dana? So if
that's correct.
If you vote yes, you're saying, yes, I want those properties listed on the HRI. So that's, I think that would, seems like that might help you understand.
Yeah, I guess it does. It's just clearly obvious to me that the property owner on Illinois Avenue didn't want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
You know, and we're saying too bad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the property is eligible based on the work of someone else, right?
Yeah,
so that's already, it's already eligible. This is just placing it on in one, I guess you want to call it a database, so that someone who's developing doesn't have to go out and review, you know, all these documents that are out there. It's like one list where you can potentially go to and determine which properties potentially need further investigation.
Okay, well, that makes it clearer to me. So I'll change my vote. How do you want to do that?
So are the two properties a deferral then, and then, or not?
Well, B, nobody has any information on B, Rhodes Court. We don't know why that's there. We don't know what is the big deal. Why is that property going to be, why is it a national historical place?
So Commissioner Nessel, can I make a recommendation that the motion be exclusive of item 1B until we get more information?
Sure.
Okay, would you make that motion?
I'll move to approve 5B with the exception of 5B, 1B, which needs additional information for it to be included on the HRI.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, Commissioner Royer, do you approve?
Commissioner Royer, I approve.
Commissioner Nessel, do you approve?
Nessel approves.
And Vice Chair Rainsford, do you approve?
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
And I approve. So we have passed that item 4 to 1 abstention. Well, sorry, absentee. All right, our next item on the agenda is item, I'm sorry. Item 5. 5B3. And that is to recommend that the Landmarks Commission change the address and reclassification of the following property listed in the City of San Jose HRI from structure of merit to candidate city landmark, and that is East Reed Street. Do we have a number for that? We have a property number.
It doesn't have an address yet.
Okay. Is there something you'd like to share with us about that, Dana?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to explain why it's being recommended that it to be a candidate city landmark?
Well, this is the Pallison apartment building that was relocated to its new site. So it was determined eligible for city landmark.
Okay.
And it was moved. So it doesn't have a new address because the building permits have been issued yet.
Okay. So Pallison is the key word here. That's the one that they took down the street. The home movers took down the street, and I think it was built in the year 1905 or something like that, and very historic and very beautiful. Do you have any questions, Commissioner Royer?
No questions.
Commissioner Nessel?
No questions.
Vice Chair Rainsford?
No questions.
I have no questions. So is there anyone from the public that like to speak? Okay. Mike Sodergren? Yen will tell you when to speak.
Mike,
Mike
please unmute
Sodergren.
yourself.
Mike Sodergren, Preservation Action Council. Yeah, I just want to note briefly on as a refresher for those that may not recall. This is the project that was done in partnership with the city, Habitat for Humanity, and PAC San Jose, and the developer that was creating a housing project, a major housing project on the sending site of 8 East Reed Street. The city provided a receiver site in land that was at the entrance to the on-ramp to Highway 280. I just want to comment that Habitat for Humanity has been an excellent partner, I believe with the city, but certainly with PAC San Jose in bringing affordable housing that is also housed in a historic building. It's the prime example of adaptive reuse that has got to feel good to everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I don't see anybody else from the public, so we will go forward with any further comments from the commissioners before we ask for a motion. Do you have any further comments, Commissioner Nessel?
Nope.
Commissioner Royer?
No.
Vice Chair Rainsford?
No further comments.
You can tell it's getting late in the evening. We all agree. So with that, I'm looking for a motion that would suit the recommendation that we provide comments on, that we recommend that the property on East Reed Street be reclassified as a candidate city landmark.
So moved.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Commissioner Nessel. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Royer seconds.
And any discussion? I think we're ready to vote. Commissioner Nessel?
Votes yes.
And Commissioner Royer?
Commissioner Royer, I approve.
And Vice Chair Rainsford?
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
And Chair Boehm, I approve. The motion passes, and the house on East Reed Street, as designated in the agenda item number 5B3, will be redesignated to a candidate city landmark. Our next item is item 5C. And that is the notice of availability for a draft environmental impact report and public comment period for the Valley Title project. A little bit of history. In 2021, this project came to the Historic Landmarks Commission. We did give comments at that time. There was no HP permit to be voted upon. We simply made our comments known. And then the EIR has been in draft form, and the due date is sometime early June. Do you know what the due date is by any chance, Dana? It's sometime early June.
I want to say it's, I
June
can lift while you're
6th.
talking. Oh, okay.
June 6th,
Yeah. So
like tomorrow.
yeah, pretty much. So hopefully I wanted this to be put on the agenda so that, number one, Commissioner Nessel could chime in. He was not on the commission during that time. And now you have a chance to look at this project. And the other thing is the rest of us can make our comments known, and we can make a decision about writing a letter to the EIR, whether that would be useful or what we would like to do to get our comments out there.
I just want to clarify in the course of your summary of the history. So the project was referred to by planning to the commission under Title 20. I think it's section 110. I can't remember what the exact section is, but it has to do with if you're within 100 feet of a landmark, then it gets referred, the project gets referred, or an FAR over a certain amount, the project gets referred to the HLC for comment. And those comments are to be gathered and to be put in the staff report for the project when it goes to the Planning Commission or City Council, and recorded in that staff report. So that will still be done. Those comments will still be placed in the staff report as required by that section in the zoning ordinance. So just to differentiate, we're not going to be re-commenting on the project. If you want to comment, the comments tonight would be specifically, we can't have a second go around. So the comments tonight would be specifically on the adequacy of the EIR, alternatives or anything else that's part of the environmental review that you don't think was adequately addressed.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. It's a little bit of a complicated item in the sense that this building was built originally in 1931, and then it was reclad with a new exterior, a modern exterior in 1969, 1970. So it was once in 1931, the Hales department store, Art Deco in design, and then it became a modern building in 1969, 1970, and converted into Valley Title Company. I think at the time, we all the commissioners present at the meeting asked that we would like to see if the facade could be removed and the original Art Deco facade left in place. So that was one of the items that we had asked earlier. Are there any additional, after the explanation that Historic Preservation Officer Peak Edwards just defined, is there any additional comments that you'd like to make? I'm going to start with Commissioner Nessel, since you were not here at that time. What are your comments about this building?
About the new building or the Hales department store?
Well, it's a structure of merit as it is as a Valley Title with a modern facade. But as you probably read in...
Yeah, it's been drastically altered.
Yes, and it would have qualified, they think, as a landmark if it hadn't been modified.
And I read the letter from San Jose Preservation and requesting that somehow somebody surgically analyze the facade or do some type of excavation work to see if the old facade could be restored. My comment on that is, who the heck's going to pay for that? You know, if that's unfair to me to ask the developer to pay for that. It would seem to me that if the city wants that, the city should pay for that. And I doubt whether they'll come up with any money to do that. And you know, the original building has been severely altered to the point where I would question whether that's now worth doing, worth saving.
And
So
just
that's
to,
my, yes,
just to
go ahead.
clarify, I mean, you're correct, and that's the whole root of the analysis, is that, you know, historically it had associations with the department store. It was a really prominent department store.
Yeah, yeah.
And it would have been significant for that association, or is significant for that association. But once something's significant, then you have to go back and do the historic integrity analysis. And through that determination, it was determined not to be significant, but because it didn't have the integrity to convey its significance, which was an Art Deco building at the time.
Right. And you know, when I look at it, it's just a brick facade. It's too bad, but that's the way it happened. Now, what about the new building? You know, and so when I look at the architectural renderings of the new building, I find it very disingenuous to see all of the foliage hanging from this huge 20-story structure. First of all, it looks like that's commercial property, right? So that would require that every commercial tenant have some kind of amazing green thumb in order to produce and maintain this foliage, which is just going to cascade from the 300 some odd feet down to the floor. And so I think the colorization of that building in their renderings is really misleading as can be. And I mean, because it's really just a huge glass tower. And to put all this greenery on there, I think is just misleading as can be.
And so just to circle back again, that's exactly what the commission was commenting on when the referral occurred.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that there's no opportunity to take another pass at those comments. So that
Fine.
referral is completed, and those comments will be in the staff report. So we'll want to focus on the IR. And just to clarify, the building's a structure of merit, which is not considered a historical resource under CEQA. So there's no significant impact as a result of its demolition. And so that's the conclusion in the EIR. You know, I believe some of the comments from PAC-SJ was that there was a disagreement there, but that's the evidence that we have.
So
you know, I'm in favor of some type of commemoration, like plaques or some type of story being told. And I think that's a good thing. We need to tell the story. But as far as preserving the building, that's a pretty tough sell.
Okay. Can we write a letter if we want to write a letter? I realize that the deadline is upcoming, so is it possible to draft a letter and send it?
It's just we have limited staff given the time frame. You know, so normally we organize to do this, and I, you know, I guess I would circle around and see what the will of the commission is, because it would have to come from the whole commission.
I understand. Just wanted to see if it was possible, and I know during Chair Salm's time, he would write a letter on occasion, and so to help alleviate some of your workload, I would be willing to try to compose a letter if that could be done. But let's circle around back to Commissioner Royer. What are your thoughts about the building now?
I don't think I have any additional comments from the feedback we provided previously.
Okay. Vice Chair Rainsford, do you have any additional comments?
No, I concur. I mean, we made our comments, they're in the record. So I see no reason to make any further comments.
Okay. I have written some of my thoughts, and I know that with the idea that we cannot, we can only add to what we've already said earlier. So I don't want to, burden you with a lot of this, but let me just say that I think that it needs to be recognized that there is a troubling aspect about this project, and that is that it's a potential landmark, and that it could, if the facade could be removed, and there is debate about that, I grant you, but then it would probably be likely a candidate landmark. And then it would be entitled to much more. As it is current, it's not, it's a structure of merit, and therefore it doesn't deserve that. But there's that doubt, and we raised that issue a year ago, and that all of us united asked for some kind of a response, and we didn't get a response. So it's frustrating as a commissioner. I would like to know how difficult it would be to do that. The other item that was raised, I think in a letter from PAC San Jose, was the setbacks. And it was in the Trenner report, which we didn't have last year and has been made available to us, that the setbacks have not been respected in the current proposal. As stated on page 50 of the Trenner Historic Resource Assessment, the project is not compatible with setbacks. The west facade exceeds the recommended street wall distance. The project's upper floors are articulated to create approximately 30-foot wide sections, but the tower appears monolithic above the podium level. And then the Trenner report states that it is compatible with historic resources nearby. And I want to echo what Commissioner Nessel said, in that it's very unlikely that they will have green thumbs living and working in the building, that it would produce that amount of green. And then in fact, when you have 11 historic buildings in that South First Street area, it is it's rather jarring to have a 300-foot tower of glass, and it's not compatible in my opinion. Let me turn to the public, because there is one person that'd like to speak. I'd like to have Yen give you the indication of when you can speak. Mike Sodergren, listen to Yen and he will give you the cue.
Mike, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Preservation Action Council, Mike Sodergren. I sent you all the commissioners along with a copy to Dana and to Robert, our concerns about this project. I guess in a word, the EIR is inadequate in answering a key question. The report's conclusion is that the Art Deco Hales department store is not historic, and that its demolition will not cause a substantial adverse change of historic resource. And we're talking about the resource. And we're talking about a resource that PAC and others have repeatedly asked for a cutting of the veneer. I do not think it's an extraordinary ask. When there's an environmental concern about what's in the ground, when somebody's renovating a gas station, the city doesn't pay to drill and figure out what's in the ground. The developer pays for that. And this is a mega million-dollar project. I am certain that this developer can afford to cut 2-foot by 2-foot sections on the second and third floor of the building in question. It is very concerning that the conclusion that Trenner arrives at is based on 50-year-old permit documents. There was no field verification of what they assert, not anything. PAC has reason to believe that below the veneer, virtually the entirety of the second and third floor maintains its original historic fabric. And if that in fact could be verified, then the building would be eligible to be a landmark. And then it would have to be considered as how it contributes to the entire context of that area of town, which is loaded with historic buildings. And PAC furthermore feels that it is no burden whatsoever for the developer in achieving the project goals while retaining at least a portion, perhaps even just the facade of the Hales department store with a complementary restoration at the ground level. We just ask that, and we will provide our comments via the formal process by the 6th when it's due. But we would ask that the HLC would weigh in on this formally and request that the developer do this. I believe that the developer will do it if requested formally by the city. Thank you.
Our next person to speak will be Will Smith. Wait for Yen to give you the cue.
Will, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Will Smith. I'm a business representative for IBEW Local 332. I'm here tonight representing over 2,000 San Jose families that make their living as electricians, plumbers, sheet metal workers, and sprinkler fitters. Though these families clearly have a stake in who West Bank chooses to build their projects, they're also your neighbors, and like all San Jose residents, they also have concerns about if the newly proposed project will add value to their community. I want to thank you for the work you are doing tonight to help West Bank understand how their Valley Title project can uphold our community's expectations. West Bank is new to San Jose and the Bay Area. Though they're well-known and respected company internationally, they've only built projects in Seattle in the US. They have a number of projects in the works totaling a few $1 billion in future construction. To get all their projects built on an aggressive timeline, they will be asking much from our city. We have met with West Bank and reviewed their projects, but what they hope to accomplish could be worth affording them the privilege to build here. That being said, every project has trade-offs between the community and the developer. We are deeply concerned that West Bank has not yet made commitments to hire a local construction workforce, pay area standard wages for all trades, nor make a commitment to use apprentices from our trades on this project. This is no little thing considering the amount of construction hours will be needed to build Valley Title and their future projects. Much needed work for a few thousand San Jose residents could be lost. Hundreds of opportunities for our youth, at-risk workers to gain a middle-class career through our apprenticeship programs could be lost. I hope this commission weighs the benefits of this for this project, for other West Bank projects, and the opportunities that they can bring the city. Let's keep in mind the totality of what this developer is offering us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. And our next person to speak is Lynn Stevenson. Lynn, when Yen tells you, please begin speaking.
Lynn, please unmute yourself.
Sorry, my mouse was not working there. Yes, I'm simply echoing a lot of the things that Mr. Sodergren said. I'm sorry, Lynn Stevenson from the Preservation Action Council. This building is in the gateway to the SOFA district. It's in an important area. It's across the street from landmarks. We know that the Hales department store is an important piece of San Jose history. It has its own history. The building is important, and the pictures of it as it was back then are just beautiful. To think that it would be okay with the city for a developer who's obviously going to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars to build this new project can't afford or shouldn't be required to do what is really minimal work to poke a hole in this facade and see what's underneath it. I mean, I just don't understand this. The cost to do this work can't exceed $5,000 to $10,000. It just can't. So, you know, to not just require that the developer do this, given the importance of this building and the potential repercussions of just demoing this building without doing this really small investigation. So I really think that we need to stick to our guns here and get this work done. I just can't believe that we would demo a building that potentially has this beauty underneath because we don't want to spend $5,000 or $10,000 or even $20,000 to investigate a really needed piece of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. I appreciate your comments. And just to give you a sense, she mentioned the California Theater and Original Joe's, but there was also a studio theater in the Trenner report, as well as the Dorman Building, which is across the street, and that is a landmark. And then the Ulipia Restaurant, which is more recently Cafe Stritch at 374. And that is a contributing site. The Boskin Garage at 400 South First Street is a structure of merit. And the old Camera One was also listed in the Trenner report at 366 South First Street. So this is, there are 11 different properties identified in the Trenner report as historic nearby. And if we put this building on the street with no setbacks, it's going to change the flavor. And indeed, that is the reason for our comments tonight, because we are looking at historic adjacency to these other buildings across the street, including the California Theater. All right, well, are there any additional comments that we would like? Should we consider writing them and forwarding as a HLC what we've already spoken tonight, or do we want to leave it as it is? I'm going to ask Commissioner Nessel, what is your pleasure? You're muted, so you have to unmute.
So I like the idea of a letter in bullet form, just stating our concerns. The statement needs to be made. I think we all have some reservations.
Commissioner Royer, how are you feeling about it? Do you want to write a letter? Are you in favor of that idea?
I just don't know that it's necessary if we're going to be saying the same things that are already in the record.
Okay.
From the commission. I don't know if there's a benefit to.
Well, the only
letter in
difference is,
addition.
you know, Commissioner Nessel wasn't on the commission.
Yeah, if something was stated earlier, then I'm sorry, I'm just not aware of it, but
yeah,
we could just send them a letter referencing that earlier statement.
Mm-hmm.
Make it easier.
Vice Chair Rainsford, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I agree with these comments. I just don't feel a need to reiterate what's already been said and put in the record. So what I would encourage is for anyone who feels so moved on this commission to individually send in a letter. But I don't think that we need to agree on a letter tonight as a group.
Okay, I would just suggest to you all that in our prior comments, I don't remember myself making a comment about the setbacks. And the fact that it was, you know, as it's stated in the Trenner report, a monolithic facade. I don't remember using those words. And so I think
I just, if I may just add that again, if that's the comment, that is related to the comments that were made, even though you didn't make it, under Title 20. So that comment would not be relevant to the EIR unless you were asserting that that setback is going to impact the adjacent historic buildings from a CEQA perspective, because the document that at hand is the EIR. So otherwise the comment would be irrelevant from a CEQA perspective.
The thing is, I have, you know, I look back at the minutes of our, I think it was August, I'm not sure, 2021. Is that when we discussed it? And, you know, the minutes captured what our discussion was, but I haven't seen how that will be how will that be extracted from the minutes of our meeting to an EIR? I mean, who's going to write it? How will that be conveyed?
Well, again, those comments will not be part of the EIR. We're talking about two separate kind of things. So there's the Title 20 referral, and those comments that were done under that referral will go into the staff report for the project, which has to do with the project design. But that's not relevant to the EIR unless you're asserting that this lack of a setback is going to have a significant impact on adjacent structures.
And it will. That's what was said in the Trenner report. It was listed under historic adjacency.
Right, but the determination was that the design of the building would not have a significant impact on adjacent historic structures. So you would be making a different conclusion. So I guess also to add to that, the Trenner report is part of the record. So it's not something that's, you know, not part of the record in the EIR.
We didn't have it at the time, so we didn't comment on it. But we have it now, and I'm the only one commenting on it. All right, I'm not going to try to beat a dead horse. If there's no interest in going forward with a letter, we will not go forward with a letter. But I trust that you will convey our thoughts on this item and make it known to them that we certainly would like to have you know, an investigation of the facade to see if it's possible to restore the original facade. And if so, that they could retain the department store as it was in 1931. And for that matter, the building as it is today with the facade from the earlier building. Are there any final?
Could I just add one more thing? Just in regard to PAC-SJ's comments about, you know, if only a small amount of money were spent to investigate whether there was something underneath, that actually, you know, even if something were found underneath, that would not impact the conclusion about whether or not it's significant. It would still not be significant because the integrity has already been lost. So if the project was to restore the building and, you know, take it back to what it originally was, then the building would be significant. But just knowing whether or not there's something there does not make it significant.
Yeah, and I think, I can't speak for the other commissioners, but I personally would be in favor of restoring the building. If that, you know, I don't know what the cost would be for that. And I realize at this late date, it may be too late, but it is a crying shame, in my opinion, that we have a historic building that could be restored and kept and retained for the South First Street, what I consider to be the heart of San Jose, at least one of the major arteries of San Jose. And we're going to lose a major building in that artery. All right. Are there any final comments, or we're going to go on to our next item on the agenda? All right. Item number 6, referrals from city council, boards, commissions, and other agencies, no items. So we will go to open forum number 7. Members of the public are invited to speak on any item that does not appear on today's agenda and is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. The commission cannot engage in any substantive discussion or take any formal action in response to the public comment. The commission can only ask questions or respond to statements to the extent necessary to determine whether, 1, to refer the matter to staff for follow-up, or 2, to request staff to report back on a matter at a subsequent meeting, or 3, direct staff to place an item on a future agenda. If one wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or click *9 to raise your hand to speak. I see Mike Sutterman. Yen, would you please indicate when he can speak?
Mike, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I come with bad news this evening. This afternoon, one of the founding members of the Preservation Action Council passed away, John Mitchell, who championed a vertical extension to restore the bell tower function of the historic clock, San Jose's historic clock tower for decades, and was involved with PAC's initiative to reach out to the state of California for grant funding to do such, which is currently under consideration by the state, passed away. And I know John respected the city, loves the city, and even in disagreement with various policy matters having to do with preservation, really called this his home. He lived in various places, but this was home for him. And I will miss him as a friend dearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think it would be appropriate just to have a moment of silence for Mike Mitchell, who passed away recently. All right, thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak at our open forum? Okay, I don't see any additional hands. So with that, I'll turn to our next item, which is item number 8, good and welfare. The first item is A, report from the Secretary, Planning Commission, and City Council. And the first item is future agenda items, and there are no items. So the second item is a summary of communications received by Historic Landmarks Commission. Dana, do you have a report of any?
No items beyond the correspondence that was received for the specific items.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is item 8A3, which is to receive any verbal reports from the Historic Landmarks Commission annual work plan goals. I think it's appropriate for me to take a couple minutes and talk about these goals as they were written, and then any updates that you might want to give. So the goals that we established for our 2021 to 2022 year was, number one, to develop a proposal for the San Jose City Council to fund financial incentives for historic preservation in San Jose and adaptive reuse incentives. And I was assigned, as well as Rachel did some research on that. Number two was recognition of historic properties with a history of diversity, and Commissioner Arnold investigated that. And number three was community outreach to diverse neighborhoods to inform residents of opportunities for preservation. Commissioner Nessel did some work on that. And then number four was code enforcement monitoring, eliminating demolition by neglect, and Vice Chair Rainsford and I both did a little work on that. And I will report to you that I unfortunately did not have any success at my proposals. And it's very embarrassing to me, but I won't go any further as to say that it was a learning experience for me, and I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm very grateful for Vice Chair Rainsford, because he worked on one, and also Commissioner Royer, she also worked on one, and it was much more successful. So let me turn to Commissioner Royer and ask if you've been able to do any additional work since our last discussion.
I haven't had a chance to do any additional work
Very
since
good.
last meeting.
Okay, we're still wondering if that possible model that you suggested for Wilmington, Delaware might be created somehow today. And I wanted to cite actually one of the, now I can't think of it. It was one of the plans, Envision San Jose, talked about making a collaboration with PAC San Jose or other organizations to make a grant proposal for restoring and reusing properties. So it's definitely within our bailiwick, and we can work on that if if PAC San Jose is interested. It's something you might want to discuss, Commissioner Royer, or if not, maybe I can talk to them about it as well. Okay, Commissioner Nessel, you've already reported back, and I don't expect anything from you. You talked about ways to make the website better and some augmented FAQs. And I think your comments were recorded, and I really appreciate it. I don't expect anything additional, but I open that to you if you have any.
Well, and just a question. One of my conclusions was that if we beefed up the FAQs, we might help people a lot. And I don't know if anybody else agreed with me, but is that something I can pursue by talking with other people and other groups and the IT department to just post? I'm sure it's just like an HTML document that has a whole bunch of different tags on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be hard to do, just, questions and answers.
Yeah, well, you're just doing research and you report it to us or to Dana, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. Well, let me know if you want me to pursue it further.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Commissioner Arnold is still working on a subcommittee. She's not here tonight, unfortunately. Vice Chair Rainsford, you had submitted some language. We decided to tentatively approve that as draft, demolition by neglect. And I think it was, hopefully you have worked with maybe City Attorney Renee Ortega or Dana or both. I'm not sure. Do you have anything to report on that?
I haven't, but I can certainly follow up by email and see where we could go. Yeah.
Okay. As long as you're here, City Attorney Ortega, have you looked at that language at all?
I did when it was initially presented, but I haven't had the opportunity to review it since.
Okay.
So, yes. Did you send? I don't know if it was. I looked at it while you were, going over it, but I don't know if you sent a copy.
I did
to me.
send it, but I can send it to you again. No problem.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for an update of that work plan goals. Our next item on the agenda is item 8A4, which is the Preservation Awards Night sponsored by the Santa Clara County Preservation Alliance. It was held on May 21st, 2022 at 7 o'clock. And I just wanted to report on you, and I don't know if you have the slides or can I put up the slides? I think I can probably use.
You can show the slides.
Yeah. So it was basically an opportunity for us to meet, share, and honor individuals and organizations who've made historic and cultural preservation contributions throughout Santa Clara County. And the evening propagated preservation by giving some elected officials and constituents inspiration to continue their efforts to honor the past, even while we continue to develop and build for the future. So what exactly happened? Well, the first half hour, people were at the tables, which were outside of Pacific Hotel. This is at History Park by Kelly Park in off Center Road in San Jose. And they had an opportunity to ask questions, exchange ideas, rub elbows with the who's who of the preservation activists in Santa Clara County. And one of them was PAC San Jose, and there you have it. And that's Lisa Wangsness. And she had a very attractive looking table, and I'm sure they got a lot of questions and shared a lot of information. During this time, the Stargazers were playing a folk group. And this man, Rick Heinlein, whose yellow shirt is we're backing into, showed a film of the Santa Clara County Fair in the 1940s and 1950s. It was really popular. A lot of people, you don't see a lot of people sitting there now, but when it started at 7 o'clock, the room was pretty much full. This is a picture of the Stargazers, and they played folk music. And then we had 30 different organizations that we invited, and 16 of them decided to do it. And so this is Kurt Fukuda, who received an award from the Japanese American Museum. This is La Raza's Jesus Linares Orozco, and the people from La Raza that gave him the award. And then, let me show you this. Sorry. These are the plaques, and you can see some of the audience out there waiting for the program to begin. We started at 7 o'clock, so the daylight was adequate to see very well. This is a couple that restored their home, and Los Gatos Council member Matthew Hudis actually presented the award. And this is Los Altos Mayor Ananda, who gave an award to Danielle Rook for the restoration of a farmhouse. And this is, you're looking at the preservation, I'm sorry, the Landmarks Commission for Palo Alto. They call it the Historic Resource Board. And this Landmark Commission decided to grant an award to Carolyn George for Distinguished Preservation Service Award. Here's the crowd all looking at the stage. And this is Tony Arnellas, who won a Distinguished Service Award. And this is the team that worked to put it on. All right. So I wanted to give you that information. It was a success by any measure. And I would encourage us to think about possibly participating in a little more detail next year, because we will be holding another one next year. And one way we could do that is to host a table. And I was hoping Commissioner Arnold might be here, because she might want to be one of the people involved in spreading information, or Commissioner Nessel, or one of us, Commissioner Royer, or Vice Chair Rainsford. If you're interested, we could host a table, or we could give an award, and we talked about the mechanism to do so. That would be done by subcommittee and so forth, that would recommend to us, and then we would confirm that. But I wanted to make that known so that we might consider it at one of our meetings, if you're interested. I certainly wouldn't want to force this, but it's an opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity to promote preservation in San Jose and in Santa Clara County. Do you have any comments? Do you have any thoughts about our participation next year? Commissioner Royer?
Congratulations. I'm glad to see that it was well attended and a successful event. I'm sorry I was out of town and couldn't join you there. But yeah, I think with a little bit more time to plan and have some more time to think about exactly how we can be involved, I think it would be great.
Okay.
Participate somehow at whatever form that looks like. I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Commissioner Nessel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a little more time and clarification on how we can participate. We should definitely be involved.
Okay. Vice Chair Rainsford?
It looks like a great event, and I'm glad to see all the these other cities in Santa Clara County represented.
Okay. So would you be in favor of putting it on an agenda for our August meeting? Our next meeting is in August. We could talk about it then. Would that be good? Commissioner Nessel, I see a thumbs up. Okay. So let's, Commissioner Royer, do you feel good about maybe talking about it in August?
Sure.
Okay, put it on the agenda. Vice Chair Rainsford, would you like to talk about it in August?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's put it on the agenda. Our next item on the agenda, let's see if I can find it where we are, is item 8A5. Starting July 1st, 2022, the Historic Landmarks Commission meetings will take place in person only for commissioners and staff. So our next meeting will be in August. And that's the next item on the agenda. Our next meeting is August 3rd, 2022 in San Jose City Hall, the City Council chambers. Any questions? Okay. Our next item on the agenda is item 8B, the election of chair and vice chair. I'd like to handle the election of vice chair first. I'd like to have a discussion if there's anyone. Vice Chair Rainsford, are you going to nominate yourself, or what are your thoughts?
You know, I will just say that I'd be happy to continue. I'd be honored to continue, but I'm also equally honored to see somebody else take over. So either option is fine with me.
Right. Let me ask Commissioners Nessel and Royer, what are your thoughts? Commissioner Nessel? Do you want
I'm too much of a newbie.
Okay. Vice Chair Vice Chair. Commissioner Royer, what are your thoughts?
I would nominate Vice Chair Rainsford to continue on as Vice Chair.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. With
All
that,
in favor, say aye.
I'll let that stand. I see a lot of hands raised. I'm raising mine. So with that, let me go person by person. We have to do it in a dignified way, right? City Attorney Renee, let me ask Commissioner Royer, do you vote yes or no on Vice Chair Rainsford remaining as Vice Chair?
Commissioner Royer, I vote yes.
Okay, Commissioner Nessel?
I vote indeed.
And Vice Chair Rainsford?
I also vote yes.
And I also vote yes. So the vote is 4-0 with one absentee to re-elect Vice Chair Rainsford as Vice Chair. Our next item is the item of chair. And because I am an interested party, I'm going to pass the gavel to Vice Chair Rainsford. Would you do the honor of holding a discussion and then taking a vote?
Absolutely. So I believe you submitted a letter. Is that correct? Yes. We all saw the letter, and so I will now take nominations for the chair of the commission.
I would nominate Chair Bain to stay on as chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I think we're ready for a vote. Commissioner Royer, what is your vote?
Commissioner Royer, I vote yes.
Commissioner Nessel, I vote yes.
And Vice Chair Rainsford, I vote yes as well. And Chair Bain, what is your vote?
I vote
You can't leave the room.
I vote yes.
That's a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is item 8C, report from committees. There was no meeting for the subcommittee of the design review on May 19th. So our next meeting that is scheduled is June 16th. Dana, is it likely that we are going to hold that meeting?
We don't have any foreseeable items.
All right. Let's keep it going. Our next item is the approval of action minutes. That's item 8D on the agenda. The recommendation is to approve the action minutes as written for May 4th, 2022.
May 4th.
Our last meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 4, 2022 HLC amendment meeting, and a second. Commission, do you have any discussion? No? Commissioner Nessel?
I vote in favor.
Okay, Commissioner Royer?
Commissioner Royer, I vote yes.
And Vice Chair Rainsford?
Vice Chair Rainsford, I vote yes.
And Chair Boehm, I vote yes. So it passes with a vote of 4-0 with 1 absentee. Our next item is item 8E. 8E is status of circulating environmental documents. There are no items. So with that, I will entertain everybody's favorite motion.
Can I add one thing before we close?
I'm sorry you can't.
Uh-oh.
We will.
Oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
Good night.
Oh, by the way.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I have an announcement to make. It doesn't have anything to do with me. And I hope it's okay with the person I'm talking about. But our beloved Renee, our city attorney, is leaving us and going, taking a job in the private sector. So this will be his last meeting. And I just want to thank him for his dedication and coming to all the meetings and giving us the advice. And I just really, really appreciate your commitment to it, and just very sad to see you go.
Thank you.
And
Bully.
I think
Thank you.
we can all echo that. Do you have any further comments you'd like to make?
No, I mean, it's been great working with this commission. I've learned a lot about the historic, attributes of this city. And yes, it's been fantastic to work with Dina. Lots more work to do for sure. And there's a lot of development in areas that potentially, trigger historic review. So you guys got a lot on your plate, or will soon have a lot on your plate. But yes, it's for family reasons. I'm moving to the North Bay. Otherwise, I would not leave you guys. But yes, my now 13-year-old son, is a teenager, lives with his mother up there in the North Bay. So I'm moving up there.
Okay. Well, let me echo Historic Preservation Officers Peak Edwards and just say how much I appreciated working with you. You've been there every time and you answer very promptly, and your answers are extremely helpful, very concise and to the point, and yet very courteous. And I think we can all count on you for expert advice, but done in a very, very humane and kind way. So we are very much indebted to you, and will be very sad to see you go, but wish you obviously the best of luck.
Thank
And
you.
be sure and leave your cell phone number with Dana.
Right?
Thank you.
That's the last thing he's going to do, I'm sure.
Change it right away.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, now are we ready to make the?
All right, I'll move that we adjourn.
Yes. Do I have a second?
Seriously.
Second.
Can I second my own motion?
No, Royer has already seconded it. With that in mind, any debate? No? Okay, Commissioner Nessel.
I approve.
And
Let's go. I got to pack a car.
Commissioner Royer.
I did see Robert's hand up. Did you want to say something before we adjourn?
Well, I just wanted to thank Renee for his services on behalf of PBCE in general, and particularly planning. For myself, I've been working with you here, but also I've had a chance to work with you from the house and side as well. So You are really going to be missed. And one thing that is very, very conspicuous is that your presence here has actually made this commission be taken seriously within the city and outside the city. So for that, we'll miss you very much. But I just also wanted to say thank you for being there for us. Thank you for your counsel, and thank you for being friends with all of us.
And
gonna miss
Dr.
you.
Manford,
Thank
we
you.
want to thank you for hiring good people, because you hired Renee and you hired Dana, and they're excellent. So, you know, we're indebted to you too. All right, spread that love around. All right, we are in the middle of a vote. And let me continue that vote. I think we were on Vice Chair Rainsford. How do you vote for adjournment?
Did Commissioner Royer vote?
I don't think I did. Commissioner Royer, I approve.
Oh, thank you for that. See, you're saved me again. Vice Chair Rainsford?
Vice Chair Rainsford, I approve.
Paul Bame, I approve, and we have a 4-0 with 1 absentee. We are good. Thank you very much. Our next meeting is August 3rd at 6:30 at City Hall. And I want to wish all the fathers, especially you, Renee, happy Father's Day. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good summer.
Have a good summer.
Good night. Take care.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.